come to me, a spirit of comfort.
There is a devil in this world, and I have met him.
He is coming.
Does evil come from within us or from beyond?
We are here encountering the undead plague carrier, Nosferatu.
You heard it up top. We're about to do the Monster Mash as we head to Transylvania, or actually Germany in this case, as we discuss the new sequel reimagining thing that is Nosferatu. Here on Normies Like Us with your hosts, Ren Colin.
Mike Von Franz.
You may call me
No.
Count Jake Locke.
Hello, Count. May I ask you about the peculiar rituals of the podcast listeners down the road in the village?
Ignore them. They are... we won't say what they are, but we don't like them.
Been waking up in the middle of the night naked saying come to me to a picture of Jacob. So this is
Yep.
good.
That's
yep,
right.
It's coming. Nosferatu. Wow,
Nosferatu.
Happy New Year. Nosferatu.
Happy New Year. We're back. We took an extended break this year, an extra week. Some things have been going on this week in Los Angeles where
We're going to talk about
Mike
the
and I
plague.
live.
We were visited by the plagues. You were visited by extreme danger in the form of many fires.
Yes, which is a good way to kill a vampire, but it's been bad, but we're back here, and we just want to do something to feel normal again after last week. So I'm happy to be back.
Mm-hmm.
And Happy New Year to you all.
Yeah, Happy
That's
New
right.
Year.
Happy Normyear. This came out on Christmas Day, famously. Now, that was the last record was before that. So here we are, 2025. What an exciting start to the year.
Do you guys remember when the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo remake came out on Christmas and its entire ad campaign was the Feel Bad movie of Christmas?
Yes, I loved it, and
Wow.
it had that Led Zeppelin song.
Yes.
It was great.
Kind
great
of
trailer.
a little repeat here. This is the Feel Bad movie of Christmas. I'm very excited to talk about it. What is everybody's history with, and I guess you can throw it to just Dracula, but of course, in particular, Nosferatu, the thing we're going to talk about today.
Right. I guess if I'll kick it off, I had seen the original like maybe 20 years ago, but it was like a weird version where like the score was replaced by like random rock and roll music.
Okay.
Because it's like a silent film, right? So there was no orchestral score. So it had like this kind of goth metal backing music to it. So I didn't really pay that much attention to it, but I like Robert Eggers, so I was excited about this reimagining, and I'll go into kind of my experience with it after that. But I know Jacob was doing a big vampire thing. I watched Bram Stoker's Dracula for the first time this year. I saw a lot of that because Nosferatu is just Dracula with some slight changes, right? But
Yes. Well, famously, F.W. Murnau, the director of the original 1922 silent film, German filmmaker, right? And I'm sure you guys know this, but for the normies out there, really he wanted to adapt Bram Stoker's Dracula, but didn't want to pay the royalties, didn't want to get the copyright, right? So it's one of the earliest examples of someone just changing the names and some small details to get around copyright, because he didn't want to pay the rights for it. So that's kind of interesting.
Well, there's a whole history of this movie almost not existing because it being litigated into destruction, somehow surviving.
Right.
Yeah.
And Bram Stoker, I believe, was dead by the point where he was making this movie, but his widow was alive, and Murnau didn't want to pay royalties to the widow, and then she later sued. It was almost lost to history, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
But for me, I talked about it on our Spooktacular episode, but this Spooktober, I was watching a lot of vampire movies to get ready for Nosferatu season.
Year of the Bat for you, Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
Year of the Bat, Year of the Rat, Year of the Wolf, all those animals. But so I did watch, Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, the 1990 adaptation, and I actually watched, of course, Werner Herzog's Nosferatu the Vampire. I actually watched this. I just watched this last weekend after seeing the new Nosferatu. I know, Mike, I think you did as well. And that's what I meant to get to in Spooktober as well, but I just sort of ran out of time for that one. And I had seen it before a long time ago, but I did rewatch it for this. The original, I don't have as much of a history with. All I know, I've seen parts of it, but I don't know if I've seen it all the way through. So that's might be one I need to check out.
Right. I want to ask Colin his history, but I didn't know when to put this. But since you brought it up, Jacob, yeah, after watching this new version of Robert Eggers, I've since watched the original 3 times with 2 different academic commentaries, and I've watched Werner Herzog's version 2 times, once with his commentary, Shadow of the Vampire, and then again I saw the remake Nosferatu 2024 to kind of bookend it. So I've now have a PhD in Nosferatu, not Dracula.
I'm so excited.
So I'll be bringing
Nosferatu
up kind of
pilled.
Yeah, I'm Nosferatu pilled, so I'll be bringing up kind of references and allusions to all the versions that this kind of touches on, but not as much with Dracula.
Right. But you saw the Coppola version in October as well, right? You said.
First time. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I do kind of consider it the same story, obviously, because you just change Dracula to Orlok, you change, Mina and Thomas Harker, Thomas and Mina Harker to Jonathan
Hutter.
And Ellen Hutter, right? Even Renfield into Herr Canuck, right?
Right.
So you're the Nosferatu expert now, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I'll bridge gaps. And then Colin, what's your kind of history with Dracula, Nosferatu?
And I'll just say real quick, I get very excited when we do these episodes, and Mike's super excited about. The last one we did was obviously Alien Romulus, where you became a master on Alien Romulus as well. So despite whatever my feelings are of this movie, which are positive, I'll tip to that. I just like when we do one that you are obsessed with, Mike. I'm very excited to learn more about this film. Obviously, my experience is more with Dracula. I like that a lot. I've read the book. I've seen those movies. I've seen the Francis Ford Coppola film. I did not watch it this year. We've talked before about why Keanu Reeves gives basically the worst performance of all time in that film, and it kind of puts him in movie jail for a while.
Yeah.
And
I just couldn't do a British accent.
He just can't do any accent. He's not.
He can only sound like Keanu.
Crazy, I return home to my wife, Count.
The radical. It's ridiculous. And then Jacob, I've never seen the original silent film, but you showed me my first Herzog film in college. I think, what is it called? Lessons in Darkness, the weird
a short
oil
film
barrack fire
that
thing.
he narrates, and obviously, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just went down a little bit of a Herzog rabbit hole and did end up watching that film, of course. So I guess that's my only prior experience with Nosferatu.
Werner Herzog is a director that I like a lot. He's made fiction narrative films. He's made documentaries. He's a little bit insane.
The craziest human being who's ever existed, of course. He was almost killed by his co-star, which is, you hear that story and it's incredible. And then you watch the video of him being shot by a sniper and saying, no, we must continue. Maybe one of the most important videos to ever exist, in my opinion.
Of course. And he was on The Mandalorian. He said, I would like to see the baby.
That's right.
And he's made a lot of films, and he made a lot of films in the 70s and 80s that were narrative. Then he's done some other narrative films, but he's also focused on documentary, like in the past couple decades as well. This movie, I feel like it's a little mid. Like, it's not one of his best films, I think. Like, he's had other ones. I
think it's pretty bad, actually. I remember not really liking it. So I kind of, Mike, I agree with you. I do like Robert Eggers. I think we'll talk about that a little more. But I think going into this, I was like, I don't know. And we'll talk again.
Yeah, it is the same story, of course. And Klaus Kinski, his insane star that he was in a couple of his movies, was played Nosferatu in that version.
Right. And so I'll just, before we jump into it, I think I can't help but reference how all Nosferatus influence each other. But they all are, each version, these main 3 versions are each also doing their own thing. Which I appreciate.
Sure. This one is
they're not just copy pastes, right?
Right. But there is inspiration in this new one of all these other versions, right? And you also mentioned Shadow of the Vampire, which is a movie kind of about the making of the first Nosferatu, and that actually starred Willem Dafoe playing Matt Schreck, the actor who
That's
plays
right.
Count Orlok, and there's also like an element of like he's actually a vampire.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. Excuse me. He's actually playing the villain in Batman Returns, of course, Max
That's
Schreck.
right,
Max Schreck, correct.
Christopher Walken. Yeah,
That's right. Yeah. So I think it's fitting that a movie about an undead creature, who has lasting influence on the contemporary times in which he finds himself, comes from a movie that was first made in 1922, which is now 102 years later. We got the remake from Robert Eggers. There's something very poetic about it being a vampire movie that lasts this long and has this much impact on cinema. So I'm excited to talk about this new vision of it that Eggers has so passionately put to the screen.
that's right.
Segue.
Back here on Normies Like Us, where we are on our quest to the castle. We've got an important real estate deal to execute, and it's time for us to head there. And while we're doing that, we're talking Nosferatu, the last film of the year, as we pointed out, directed by Robert Eggers, a remake, kind of, a reimagining, a retelling of the classic vampire film.
Yeah, and it'll be spoilers for Nosferatu and everything Nosferatu because it's always the same story. So slightly spoilers for Dracula too. If you haven't read a book from 1898 or whatever, sorry.
Yeah, that's fair.
Spoilers for Bram Stoker's.
Did you guys have to read it for school?
Mm-mm.
Not that one. Actually, I read Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein at school.
Yeah, we had to do that one too, but no Bram Stoker's Dracula. But I want to maybe contend with something Jacob said, that it is Dracula, because I personally feel like Nosferatu, it has many of the same beats, but I think it's its own thing now, and I want to argue like broadly it is very much 100% based on Dracula. It was supposed to be that, but the additions of things like the Plague of the Rats and Helen having more of a protagonist angle as opposed to being Thomas and Van Helsing, I think that changes it substantially enough to have its own themings, because 1922 is a couple years removed from the 1918 flu epidemic, which is why the rats bringing plague was such a plot point in the movie, because that's playing on the very real fears of the time. So when I'm saying people are putting their own spin on Nosferatu as they adapt it throughout the years, like that was something that was not in Dracula that makes it, I think, tangibly different in theming. And in Herzog's version, he was like, after World War II, all of us filmmakers now are fatherless generation. We don't have anybody to teach us. So he wanted to reconnect with Nosferatu in his own way as like a historic piece of German filmmaking. And he does it his way. And, one of his twists...
a history project. That's great.
Kind of, right. And so in his twist was the vampire can create new vampires. It turns Thomas' character into the next Orlok, and that's kind of like World War II. Like, we could not defeat the specter of the Nazis in World War One, and they returned, and it's like this, the evil perpetuates is kind of the theme that he's playing on with his version. So every version is kind of adapting something, and it's going to be cool to see what Eggers does as the first American to tackle this very historically German story. Yeah.
I think it's the same story as Dracula, but it's just, the same basic beats, but like you said, there are different takes on it and different themes, like with the rats. And obviously like Dracula takes place in England, so it's all the characters are English. In this version it's German, so all the characters are German, right? So instead
pretty different if you ask me.
Yeah, but it's a more German take on it, and I think you can definitely see that in Herzog's version.
Oh, nihilistic.
The play party.
It's very sort of grim and stuff. But even in Herzog's version, what's interesting is that he calls Nosferatu Dracula instead of Orlok, Count Dracula, right? So all the characters are like the Dracula names in the Herzog version, or it's a mix, because actually, like, I think the protagonists are like Jonathan and Lucy Harker or Hutter, which is like a combination of both names from both versions. Yeah.
Let's kind of start there. Let's talk about the name for a second. Nosferatu. Do you like it? What does it mean? And it kind of has become synonymous with just vampire, right?
Yeah, I think I assume it's like a German word, right? I don't know what it means actually.
Demon, maybe?
I can't remember the direct thing, but it's like kind of a translation of a Romanian word that means something or other, but it's like it's kind of not a real word, but it's based on a word that's close enough. I don't have the exact facts, but it's
kind of inherently scary.
It feels ancient.
Yes, it feels like a horrifying word, right?
Yeah, it really does.
Well, and Dracula or Orlok was sort of based on like Vlad the Impaler, right? Who so he's in this country of Transylvania, this Eastern European country that our main character has to travel to, from Germany, cross the Carpathian Mountains into this. He stays at this small village of locals there, and they warn him not to go to the castle and all that stuff.
Right.
And so there's a history of like this guy who's been living for centuries in this castle. So it's a very Eastern European kind of feel, right?
Right. And I appreciate that. Like in some versions, like there's so it comes from Dracula, right? And there's always this little bit of historical context where it's like there's the fear from without. Oh, a threat from a foreign country coming to our civilized nation that's Christian, God-fearing. So there is that kind of unfortunate fear of the other built into the aspect. But yeah, it's this Vlad the Impaler thing, and I like that that's minimized in Edgar's version. But it's part of the text, we just needs to be said.
Yeah, and I think, of course, my favorite adaptation of any Dracula work,
Bram Stoker, Francis Ford Coppola, right?
No, my favorite is Castlevania, of course.
Of course.
Yes,
the Netflix show,
which has the video games a recurring character, because those games are always cyclical. A boss named Orlok usually appears in most games.
Oh, that's right. I hadn't thought about that. That's cool.
And in that version, his full name is Vlad Dracula Tepish, right? And he comes from Wallachia, which is what that region used to be called at a certain time in history. So it really goes back. So there's minor details in every version, but there's consistencies that remain the same. And like you said, with the theme of the plague was a big thing, in that time because obviously the Black Plague and stuff. So rats or wolves, these different animals that can represent the vampire. And then, of course, there's also sort of the sexual theme of it all, which we'll of course.
Oh, is this movie a little sexual?
Yeah, that's true. Vampires have always been sexy. There's Bram Stoker was apparently like in a sexless marriage and writing this kind of there's Dracula has a lot of sexual energy in it anyway, because it's this weird love triangle, a gothic romance, right? So there's always been sexuality tied to the character Dracula or Orlok, whatever interpretation.
Right.
Yeah, base desires. Are they good? Are they bad? I'm in Victorian England. Sex is bad, right? But I want it, right? It's like it's desire, right? Yeah.
And in this one, it'll be interesting because I get sort of a almost a grooming sexual assault kind of angle of it, of young what's her name, Ellen, sort of being groomed in a way by Orlok. And so even though she's older, she has these mixed feelings about him, where she has lust, but she also knows like that it's bad. So she's very conflicted, right?
She has like a sense of shame around it too. Yeah, it's like, it's not your fault, Ellen, kind of thing. So there's those kind of themes going on.
She loves her husband, and that's kind of, she realizes at the end, like, I don't love you, Orlok, I love my husband, and these feelings that I have are bad and shameful.
And that's like kind of one thing I really like about Edgar's version. It's a great way to jump into it, is that's what we open on, is Ellen is very lonely when she's younger, and she calls out to a spirit from any realm of whatever existence to comfort her. She wants to not be lonely, and unfortunately Orlok answers that call, and she doesn't know any better, and that ties her to this, that binds her to him for the rest of the narrative, which in the other versions, Murnau's and even Dracula or Herzog, he kind of is just like already buying the house, and then he sees the locket and is like, oh shit, bonus. But like this kind of gives more narrative to why he's buying a house in that town in the first place, because that is very much in motion. As the film
in Coppola's version, it's Gary Oldman is Dracula, and he's an ancient warlord, like Vlad the Impaler, who did have a love of his life, this woman who died hundreds of years ago, and what's her name, Mina Harker, Winona Ryder, is basically the reincarnation of his lover, because she plays also his lover in the flashback. So he sees the locket that Keanu has, right? And that's when he wants, he's like, I'm going to steal your wife, right?
And obviously that film, I guess we're going to talk a lot about what Orlok looks like in this film, which is, of course,
Mm-hmm.
hidden from the marketing. And it was a very conscious
Yes.
decision. And it's very interesting and very wild. But before we spoil that, I'll just say, obviously in that film, Jacob, you've got Gary Oldman transforming and playing between the roles of the
Yes.
hideous old man and the
A
beautiful
young,
creature, and
sexy
playing
version.
on sexuality
Mhm.
in this way. But to your point of this film's it more being about like an inappropriate power balance, I think
Yes,
that
power
is why the well, we'll talk about it. The body stays the way that it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when Ellen first, calls to him when she's he's this older authority figure or whatever, she's a young girl.
I
so
will
she's
let you
easily
star in a
seduced.
sitcom. Like,
Yeah.
No,
Oh man.
no.
Harvey.
Right.
Come to
So
my trailer after dark.
yeah. So obviously, Coppola's Dracula is going to be my Bloodborne of this episode, but no, not to compare everything to that, but because my feelings are positive on this movie, Nosferatu, I'll say up top, but maybe not not as high on it as Mike, maybe, but also, but
Sure.
pretty high on it. Yeah.
Well, fair enough on that. And I know Mike just kind of set us on the track that we're going to talk about the plot a little bit. But question for you, Jacob, since I don't think you're the only one who hasn't answered it, what is your opinion on Robert Eggers?
I like Robert Eggers. He has a very specific style that I think he uses, a specific like aesthetic, and obviously attention to period detail that he's very obsessive about. So he has a very he's made different kinds of movies in different eras, right? But they all kind of have similar themes and similar aesthetics, right? But I'm a fan of it. Yeah,
they're all very serious. Even his comedy, The Lighthouse, is very serious.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's bad luck to kill a
two
seabird.
guys going insane. Yeah.
Or one guy going insane, depending on how you read it. I don't know. It's
right,
wild.
Right. But all of his movies until now have had the something. So this is the first time that it's not the title isn't the.
It should be the
Nosferatu,
the
Witch,
Nosferatu,
the Lighthouse, the Northman, the Nosferatu.
I see.
I think his next movie is called The Night. So I'm not. So I'm not even making that up. The Night.
A medieval one, huh? Okay.
Yeah. So he has a thing.
Well, also this is his first adaptation of a thing. Originally going to be his second movie with Anya Taylor-Joy and Harry Styles in the Lily Depp Rose, and
that's right. Harry Styles to Nicholas Hoult. Yeah. What an upgrade, because that movie, this movie could have been not as good, probably. Anya Taylor-Joy, I like, but I can see how she would have played this role, and I think that maybe Lily Rose Depp was also a better fit. So, I'm thankful that we got the casting that we got.
Absolutely, and that's another good thing to bring up is the casting. I think it's excellent top to bottom. We'll get to Bill Skarsgård as Orlok when he shows up. Aaron Taylor Johnson and Bill Skarsgård owe this movie a lot because we had Craven and The Crow. So they should be thanking their lucky stars that they're in a good movie at the end of the year.
And Nicholas Hoult, I just saw another movie with him, Juror Number 2. So he's got 2 movies out kind of in the, in the public right now in the discourse. But Nicholas Hoult, can we talk about him for a minute? Because this guy loves being in vampire movies. Because of course he also was in a movie called Renfield, where he played Renfield, who is the Herr Canuck in this version, basically the guy who's driven mad by
servitude
Nosferatu and starts
Orlok.
serving him. Played by Tom Waits, the musician in the Coppola version, in a great fun role. But so Nicholas Hoult loves being in Dracula, loves being in vampire movies.
Love to see it. Love a good
Willem
blood
Dafoe,
bag too, if we saw.
Also loves being in vampire movies, apparently.
Well, and also he's kind of outing himself. Of course, he is a vampire.
That's true.
Yes.
And he's a long-time collaborator. He's a goblin. That's right.
He's returning for sure. Absolutely. And some others returning as well. I was very happy to see some of the Vivitch cast return in this film.
Oh yeah, Ralph Ineson comes back. Yep.
Ralph Ineson. I always love to see him because this guy, he was born to be in period movies, I think.
Boy.
Doesn't even matter the period, but he's just got the voice, he's got the look. he was in Game of Thrones too. So he's.
I'll remind you
obviously
guys,
was
he
the
was
Green
in
Knight.
a Willow TV show that we covered on this podcast that does not
That's right,
exist
doesn't
anymore.
exist.
You can't watch anymore. Actually, I believe he sued the production because he got injured in a stunt on that
Oh no!
on that show, and so we had to sue the production over it. Yeah,
Cool.
And they're like,
I
"There's
was
no
reading
record
about
of this show ever existing. What are you talking about,
we're
Mr.
sorry. What do you,
Aniston?"
Willow? That was a movie from the 80s.
Yeah,
You're losing your mind, sir.
but I always like to see him, the Green Knight, of course, and
Of course, the
he's
Green
just
Knight, the Green
always.
Goblin.
Yeah, we got all those guys.
And we get to see Emma Corrin from Deadpool and Wolverine back, and
That's
right.
Diana. They are back as Anna Harding,
Right.
one of the wife of Aaron
Honestly,
Taylor Johnson.
The only one I didn't like in this movie, I thought it was a mixed bag of performances, but Aaron Taylor Johnson,
Thank you.
probably my least favorite. I mean, he's a little. I wasn't digging him in this
Jacob
movie so much.
is allowing me to bring up my number one point I wanted to make on this podcast, which is that the casting all around is phenomenal, but this is one of the biggest disasters of all time to include this man in your film.
Here's this question.
I think he's the Keanu of this version.
Right,
That's
is it
but he is
intentional?
British, I will point out.
Yeah.
But yes, go ahead.
But is he playing like a foreign American? His accent isn't like everybody else's. He's like, you tell me, man. It's like,
insane. Yes.
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know what he's doing.
But in Dracula, they have that cowboy guy that like helps hunt Dracula. So it's
Well,
like
here's my
feels kind of
take
like
is
that.
Yes.
My take is that Dracula is
character.
superior because Nosferatu never includes the American cowboy, which is the best part of Dracula, as
That's
everyone
true.
knows.
Well, and you know what I'll argue is that, of course, Brendan Fraser's The Mummy has all these same architects as the guys who find the other mummy thing. And one of them's like,
Right.
I'm the cowboy, and one's like, I'm
Yes.
the smart guy. And you're like, okay.
That's true. We are lacking in cowboy in all Nosferatu adaptations. I will cede that. We make up for it with rats. You know,
Like in Coppola's version, you have like Carrie Elwes is the doctor, who's Ralph Ineson is the doctor in this version, but he's more of a like they have three romantic suitors for Lucy Westenra, right? Who's the Emma Corrin.
yeah.
Before you said Castlevania, I was so sure in my heart that you're going to say Mel Brooks's Dracula Dead and Living It, which is, of course, the film that I have probably seen the most as a Dracula adaptation.
Wow, I have not seen that.
I've never seen that actually. Yeah,
You guys have never seen that? Oh, it's
You gotta
horrible.
see that one.
It's going on the list then.
It's Leslie Nielsen is so old and so sad in it. But it's great.
bummer.
It's no
Like-
Young Frankenstein.
No, but yeah, I think it's a good cast overall. Aaron Taylor Johnson is kind of strange, but it's fine. It's fine. You know,
I think they're all. I mean, Willem Dafoe. I always like him, but he's hamming it up to a certain degree. Like they're all a little like hammy, but I think that's sort of on purpose, right? But
Right.
but
They're
Willem
playing it
Dafoe-
almost like it is a silent film still, which is very interesting.
It's a
And
very
I almost wonder if Aaron Taylor Johnson, like Austin Butler after he played Elvis, was just stuck in Craven mode.
oh man, yeah, maybe you just couldn't get out of it.
I think I just don't like Aaron Taylor Johnson as an
I'm
actor
positive.
very much.
There's no think for me. I'm positive.
Yeah,
I
I
do
mean,
not
what
care
is he?
for
What has
him.
he been in that I like? I mean, he was Kick-Ass. He was.
I don't really like
Quicksilver.
Kick-Ass. I don't
Yeah.
really like Quicksilver, dog. And those were
No.
the biggest
Not his
swings. And
Quicksilver.
Craven, it's
Yeah,
like
he
couldn't
was
even.
he was
pay
nothing
me.
as Quicksilver. He just dies, and then I was like, he had no character.
Then he gets Ralph
Yeah.
Boner out of the universe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
We should
But,
all be so lucky.
Aside from that, though, I think the cast is really strong. Lily Rose Depp has like a star-making performance, I think, in this.
Absolutely.
All of her physical
Well-
performance, not just her emotional, but like the physical movement she's doing, none of that's ramped up. Like that's real speed. Her doing
No.
these
Yeah.
convulsions, it's pretty wild.
Like Jacob said, you see how Big Eyes would have done it, but the fact that the Yoga Hoosiers girl and Johnny Depp's daughter is like giving like a performance of a woman truly going through mania or mass hysteria. Like it is kind of on
Yeah.
another level of like physicality as well as like heightened emotional response.
No, I thought she was good. You say a star-making role, but obviously you guys haven't seen her hit show, The Idol, with
Oh,
The
right.
Weeknd.
Of
This
course.
is
The
about
show that was,
Yeah.
of course, panned when it came out. But actually, she's good in that show, and it really shows her range if you watch The Idol, which is about
Have you really watched that?
Yeah, I watched it, of course.
Wow.
Of course I am.
Of course, I watched that hated HBO Max show
Yeah,
that everybody hated.
fascinating.
Created by The Weeknd and acted in by The Weeknd, and then very much panned. But she was actually really good in it, and it shows her range because she's sort of playing a bit Britney Spears-esque pop star who's trying to make a comeback to a certain degree. To go from that to this, you can definitely see her range. And what's
She's a
interesting
pop
is
star mounting a comeback whose dreams are haunted by a monster.
Yeah.
yes,
Wow.
named The Weeknd. Yeah.
Yes. Count Weekend.
And then
Out the weekend.
there are some
I was
similar
blinded
themes in it,
by
actually,
the
which is
light.
interesting. If you consider The Weeknd the Count Orlok type character.
Right.
Yeah, go watch The Idol on HBO Max.
I certainly won't.
I don't. We
what's
do not.
funny is,
Normies Like Us does not endorse or represent any of
No.
these opinions.
What's funny is on the internet, I saw a lot of takes like before this movie came out of like the casting of Lily Rose Depp, of people saying like, oh, she has iPhone face, she has Zoomer face, where people say like, oh, I just don't believe her in period films. And they say that about other actors too, but this one I can't get behind,
Well,
because if anything, I go the opposite way.
I totally buy
She has
it.
peasant face. She has medieval
Peasant
peasant
face.
face. Like she fits in perfectly in that
Respectfully.
period.
You fucking peasant.
Like she
People are
looks like she
very
belongs.
against her, Jacob. You ask why. I would always point to, we really are in a culture that hates Nepo babies right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of backlash on Nepo babies.
Well,
and I say, how dare you attack Jack Quaid?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would argue that we live in a culture where Nepo babies are still very much successful.
They thrive, but
Yeah.
the opinion of them is really negative and regarded as kind of a huge faux pas at the moment to hire one, I would say.
Yeah,
but
at
nothing
the same
ever
time,
comes from it.
No,
so many actors are second generation. So many creatives that are working right now are Nepo babies because it's easier to break into the industry, obviously, if your family's in the industry. But some of them do actually have talent, right? And so, yeah.
You can't deny that. But also, it's any industry. Aaron Taylor Johnson's in this movie. He inherits his father's shipyard. If your parents owned a car dealership, maybe you would end up running it. Like, it's not like any
that's why
other
a lot of actors
job.
go into the family business, but they do have certain advantages, of course. I don't hate Nepo babies, but I don't hate anyone really. Well, I do hate some people.
Some of them.
Right.
I don't like that some are untalented and get opportunities that more talented people don't get because of who they're related to. But for ones like Jack Quaid, people that get it, and usually, if they're asked about it in an interview, if you have like a cool response to it where you're like, yeah, I'm a Nepo baby, like, so what? Like, if you don't take it personally, then I think you're okay.
There's a disproportionate amount of negative feedback towards the Nepo baby phenomenon.
But I think it varies case by case.
Case by case.
I'll never forget the fucking bombshell on the Nightmare Before Christmas episode when Jacob revealed that Willow Smith Nepo baby makes pop punk music.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Like, huh?
And yeah, I like her as a musical artist.
But Jaden Smith ruining Karate Kid, I have an issue with.
Yeah.
So it's case by case. Bill Skarsgård Nepo baby, right? Come on,
right, the Skarsgård acting family.
No one would ever complain about, though. That's so interesting, Mike. People do not come against the Skarsgård dynasty. Yeah,
right. No, you dare not.
Well, it's all just a matter of recognizing your privilege and accepting that. But I think if you're cool about it, then people will be cool about it. But some of them take it really personally, and that's when it's like, just don't take it personally, man. But
yeah.
Whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, but personally, I think she does a great job in this role, and everybody except for maybe Aaron Taylor Johnson falls into it. Like, I think Nicholas Hoult falls into Thomas Hutter. Like, the costuming and stuff is really great. Just generally, the production of this, it feels rooted like a Robert Eggers film does. Like, you get transported to that period, and a lot of the costumes I see, even for like Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, like, you only see him in like 2 shots of the original 1922, that character. But he's very much dressed like that version with the same facial hair from 1922, even if it's like somewhat minor. There's still like this kind of reverence to the original as far as the way the wardrobe and hairstyles are done. So,
well, should we talk about Count Orlok himself? Because I think visually there is a bit of a departure from the other depictions of Count Orlok in Herzog's and the original, where he's this bald, pale guy with pointy ears. right, and vampire teeth.
Teeth in the front. He's got like little rat teeth again. The plague. This little rat man creeping up on you. Yeah.
Right. In
iconic.
This version, yeah. In this version, it is. I mean, it's not totally different, but he has some different characteristics, right?
Yeah, and this is, again, the difference between Nosferatu and Dracula. He's not a suave nobleman. He's more monstrous, even in the original Nosferatu. He's like a little rat guy. But in this one, it is very much Eggers wanted to go back to the folklore era of when people believed vampires were real, and it was like an undead corpse. Like, it's a horrific creature, and they kind of lean into that.
Is he still Vlad the Impaler, Mike?
I don't believe he's Vlad the Impaler officially. Just that's the inspiration.
He's like some sort of like Cossack general,
I think,
or something.
Yeah, and he became like a sort of dark sorcerer and corrupted with dark magic and sold his soul to the devil. There's something like that. Like
that's so much scarier.
Yeah.
But see, I kind of like the Dracula version where he's this like old decrepit guy, but then through like illusion, he can make himself look young and suave again, but really he's still the old.
But also, but think about your beloved movie. Go back to the opening scene, Jacob. The sort of flashback. You like a like Turkish warlord who's putting like people's heads on pikes. It's like, curse you, God!
Stabs the cross. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all, of course, 3 men with facial hair.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I would argue that none of us specifically have the mustache. Mike, you said you shaved it down last week to mustache style.
Before we were having crazy issues at RE the record, I had a shaved to Orlok mustache and had a little hat. I was going to surprise you guys with a great bit. Yeah,
it was a great bit. It's a visual bit.
The most surprising thing, I would argue the reason they did not want to show his look is that I'm
going to say it's the second most surprising thing about him, but
well,
I'm glad they hid
teeny little surprise.
In the marketing. And didn't ruin it,
Let's talk about the accuracy of it. Let's talk about that marketing and how you guys felt about it not showing him and just using his voice. But I do want to point out that I saw a million memes that the 2 films released this weekend, and it was a picture of Jim Carrey and Sonic and Count Orlok star basically the exact same looking character.
Yeah. A lot of Nosferatu without context would have at least one image of Robotnik as the stand-in.
Yes. He has a mustache, right, in this version, which is a little different than the other versions of Nosferatu, and he has a little hat, and he's just a very Turkish general-looking kind of guy. Yep. But like you're saying, Mike, like it is sort of period accuracy, which Eggers is very into, so it kind of makes sense for him to look like that.
Yeah, and I love it.
What do we think of the look?
Yeah, Vlad the Impaler has always been depicted with that mustache, so it's kind of a nod to that, even if it's not explicitly who he is. And the reason I like it so much is because so much of what vampire movies we have all been basically just film tropes regurgitated of Dracula adaptations. So to go all the way back to like a true vampire that's monstrous, I really, really appreciate that. It's really fresh, and I think that's what works with me for the look and the design and even the mannerism of this take on Dracula or Orlok. Colin, what do you think?
We're going to talk so much about what this film looks like as well. I think this is one of the absolute best looking films in recent history. I think the cinematography is out of this world. I think the lighting is out of this world. The way that his look is revealed, because again, the trailers didn't show him. It was mostly just the voice. The poster is just his outline with like his hand out, and it's all like, Lily Rose Depp just being like, right, like was pretty much like all of it, right? Yeah, like having a good time. Yeah, in the shadow. That the way that you see Orlok, it's almost kind of nonchalant because you are shown him in different shades of darkness over the course of basically like several cuts in that first opening where you see silhouette, then you see him at the table with a little bit of like the top of his head shown, then the eyes, then the mustache, then eventually you'll kind of get like a full look. And it's really not till the end of this film where, spoiler alert, he turns into Jack Skellington that you really kind of see what he looks like fully lit, I would argue. So the way this
Yes.
film plays with even how you see this look is absolutely fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, yes, I agree with, about the cinematography, the lighting, like the use of shadows is really good. Like, and the whole scene where Nicholas Hoult arrives at the castle and meets Orlok, right? This whole arrival scene.
You will address me by the title I have earned.
My
Yeah.
bloodline, yeah.
He's sort of he's you see his silhouette, you see him in shadow, hidden in shadow. Like you don't get a good picture of him in the scene. It's really well done the way they set him up. But yeah, you don't kind of get the full picture of it until later.
Would you guys sell a castle to a guy who won't show you his face?
Oh man, that's as soon as the carriage showed up, I would go home.
Oh, that's a good point, Mike.
I would be
like,
that is
what?
a little bit of Supernatural where I'm like, you know what? You can't train these things to do this. There's just like not a chance. Like, I got to get out of here.
Let alone
Right.
everything with the pouring of the wine. Drink.
Yeah.
Like, I gotta go. Actually, like, I can't do
And
this.
this scene to me is always so important in these adaptations because again, it's a
critical.
Bloodborne at all, but Coppola's Dracula, that's one of my favorite scenes in that version is when Keanu goes and meets the Gary Oldman in that whole scene.
Like the big wig.
Yeah, the big hairstyle, and he's doing things with shadows too, where like his shadow is moving independently of him behind him, and he's like doing this and everything.
It's Peter Pan in it.
And
Yeah.
so like that's so important for setting up the story, and I think this version really nails that whole. Like I think the opening of this movie is really strong. Everything up to Orlok coming to Vismar, I thought was really strong. I mean, we'll get into like overall my positive feelings, but I may have one or two critiques as well.
The way they're portraying this Orlok is like a supernatural, like you don't see him, but you feel him. Like he is very much a presence more than a visual thing. Yeah.
And everything with the locals, with the rituals they're doing and everything, like really adds to that mysteriousness and just the atmosphere of it all is just really well done.
The word I would use is dread. Robert Eggers is the master of just tension and dread, of just making you be like, I mean, you see the witch in Vivitch. I think it's like the opening shot, again, sort of obscured in a certain way, but he's always willing to put the thing you should be afraid of front and center, but also like terrify you with it, like really like haunt you with it still somehow, which is very interesting.
Yeah, the Vivitch is such a strong movie for me because it's sort of it's a masterpiece of minimalism where it's like there's long stretches where not that much happens, but like you're right, it has this building sense.
The villain of the film is a black goat.
Yeah,
it's a little boy named Philip or Bad Tom or whatever his name is.
Black Phillip, yeah,
Bad Tony.
But there's this building sense of dread, and there's this religious superstition, which I feel like he deals with a lot in his movies of like religion versus science, like superstition versus logic kind of thing, which is a big part of this movie. Also where you have the Aaron Taylor Johnson character versus the Willem Dafoe, where Aaron Taylor Johnson is getting increasingly like, you guys are all crazy, like you're talking about vampires and stuff, like my wife is like, something's wrong with my wife, like you
guys are schedule.
It's not a vampire.
He's kind of losing his mind.
And that's like very much Dracula in the Industrial Revolution of England and stuff. It's like, oh, maybe the science, we're getting too big for our britches, and we can't forget that there are maybe primal forces. It's kind of dealing with that.
Witches and monsters.
And again, you have this count from a foreign country doing these strange rituals, and the locals are doing these rituals where they're sacrificing animals and things like that, and it's all very foreign to us here in German civilization.
Yeah, like truly like the message of this book and film.
And I guess we're kind of jumping, but he's married to Lily Rose Depp, and he's going to sell the house to Orlok, and that's how this all goes. But like in the original and the Herzog version, like he just gets a book that like the lady at the inn gives him about vampires, like don't go to the castle, learn about this stuff. But in Eggers, I like that he has this, was it a dream or wasn't a dream? Oh, my feet are muddy. Did I see them kill a vampire in the woods or not? Like that's such a cool visual way to show that he's learning about his potential threat than just reading the book, which is how the original was. So a nice touch that Eggers made to make this kind of his own. In that way.
And this is a movie about Nicholas Hoult looking for his horse. It's him. It's basically a film. 50% of Nicholas Hoult wandering through a dark castle like he's playing Dark Souls. Like you're talking about Bloodborne, Jacob. Like he's truly just like opening doors and just like going deeper into a labyrinth where I'm like, stay where you are. Don't ever go deeper.
Right. Well, he's having these like fever dreams at night where he doesn't know what's real, what's fake. He's like wandering around the castle,
exactly,
getting lost in these hallways.
Making those noises while he's in bed, just like, oh.
Yeah, we're basically getting a Harrenhal arc from him when he's at the castle.
Yeah, he's losing his mind.
But
also, Orlok might be like feeding on him and like drinking his blood, which is making him lose his mind more.
Which we see that very intense visual that kind of has some sexual energy when he's feeding on Thomas. But then he's like, is it a dream? Is what I'm experiencing happening or not? Like, there's this very like he doesn't know. Like, are you in a dream? The whole movie feels kind of like a dream. But the stuff at the castle, especially, it's like it's hard to tell what's real and what's not, and that's kind of the point. The supernatural force of Orlok, the influence.
And speaking of blood drinking, I wanted to ask you guys something because while this is going on, Lily Rose Depp has said to her husband Nicholas Hoult, "Please, we've just gotten married. Do not go on this trip. I have a bad omen." And he's like, "Oh, you're just having another one of your spells that you had when you were
troubles,
younger, the lady times." I don't think so. Gotta go, girl. What was I gonna say? Nicholas Hoult, Providence.
Yes, it's
I cannot fucking remember. What the hell was I gonna say?
I don't know. He's going to sell the real estate.
Oh, Lily Rose Depp. Too much blood. Here's the thing.
Oh yeah.
She is having episodes while he is gone, and she's been taken in by the Aaron Taylor Johnson family and basically kind of just like hang out with them. They're treating her nice, except she keeps having like her insomnia, her night terrors and stuff. And the doctor, Ralph Ineson, comes to her and he says, well, she actually has too much blood in her body. Is that something that can occur?
Well, I know they used to leech people, and I was like, "Oh, you need to leech the bad blood." This is very
get
scientific.
All that out of you.
Yeah,
you're telling me
the
that
bad humors.
I think I've only got so much of it.
Yeah, but of course, a lot of it comes back to in the olden days, like, the female orgasm, right, was called like hysteria, right? People she's like, oh, she's suffering from hysteria, she gets these spells, right, where she loses control, and it's like because it was such a patriarchal society, of course.
Eyes keep rolling in the back of her head and she keeps screaming a man's name. We need to put her into an asylum.
She's a witch, probably.
Well, there's also a concept of her sleepwalking as like a somnambulist. It's like in the olden days, like there would be like there's a connection between that and the supernatural almost. So like they're playing with that as like a reality in this universe. Like that is why she's more sensitive to Orlok's influence when she was younger. How she could call out and even kind of wake him is because she has this. She's kind of on the thin veil between our realm and the next. But
But I see a lot of similar themes with the Vivitch, with this idea of like female sexuality.
She just wants to live
expressing itself within a religious patriarchal society. Yeah, so it's interesting that Anya Taylor-Joy, was originally the choice to play that character. But I think Lily Rose killed it for sure.
Yeah. She shaved her head. She went to the desert.
That's right. She had another thing to go after. Get Dementis. There's other kind of commentary I think you read too with this of like she does. I read this online, like Lily Rose Depp, Ellen. She doesn't have control of her body, yet all of these men are telling her what to do and not listening to her. Like, you tied me down, make her sleep in her corset, give her more ether, like just make her not annoying to us. Yeah, it's like we don't want to address your issues or see from your eyes what you're dealing with. It's annoying us men, so let's make that. You go away, not help you.
Bondage, tie you up,
Yeah, you're an inconvenience to this order. Like, it's very much, about the patriarchy being shit.
And that's sort of what the Ralph Ineson doctor character represents to me, of like the patriarchal society of like, oh, the doctor says you must be tied up so you don't start convulsing in the middle of the night kind of thing.
It's the most positive version of it because, of course, he does get several chances in this, like the Renfield stand-in when he's like, no, don't beat him. Hey, let's rap a while. What's going on with you? I'm like a new age doctor. I like ask you like what's going on before we put you in the electric chair.
And
it's
he's
like,
the one,
oh
of
yeah,
course, that believes
well,
in Willem Dafoe, who's kind of
the master. Ooh.
That's right.
I love the scene where he goes into Renfield and he's biting off the head of the pigeon or whatever. He's like, my good sir, why would you do such a thing?
The scene, and of course, Mike said Providence. The scene where he's introduced, where he gives Nicholas Hoult his charge of you must complete this real estate transaction, which basically means take this paper, ride a horse to this place, and get a signature back in the day. Which is amazing that like your job was like you're the errand boy.
You're earn the commission though.
Yeah, that's true. But he's in that opening scene and he's playing a person who has completely lost his mind, but has to be like, yes, I'll get that done by Tuesday. Of course I can still do work and I'm normal. And when you turn, and again, the cinematography is so great because you see him from the side the entire time talking, and he turns and he has that huge scab on his head. So you know already he's having like his crazy skin issue and stuff, but it's just so lightly hinted and played at. It's again fantastic.
There's also the map when he's saying you got to go here. There's like an occult paper that he covers with another piece of paper, like really quick. He's like, oh shit, my Dracula stuff. Let me hide that.
My Count Orlok love notes. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So he's clearly been in correspondence. Yeah.
This is Herr Canuck, the Renfield of this version, and I always like the Renfield. He's sort of he's a servant to the master, and he gets under his thrall. Yeah, and he does in the shadows. Yeah, and again, Nicholas Hoult Renfield in the movie Renfield to Nicolas Cage's Dracula.
Yep. I do want to say that with Hernock being the real estate guy, and he's our Renfield. Again, in the original and in the Herzog, it's like Orlok is already buying a house in this neighborhood without knowing that his love is there. So having Lily Rose Depp have a connection with him from the beginning shows that he's probably spent years like figuring out where she is, who is she married to, what job does he have? Okay, I'm going to get it his boss to be my Renfield because that's how I get closer to Ellen. Like it shows more of a well thought out plot that Orlok's been slowly conceiving of as opposed to who's that in the locket? She's a baddie. So I like that it's more tight narratively.
If you guys bought a house from a guy and then you saw on the news that they ripped up his carpet and there was like a huge devil circle like drawn
like a pentagram,
would you move? Or would you just be like, well, that has nothing to do with like the house he sold us?
Is it rent control or what's the rate?
Yeah,
I'll put up with a lot.
And then to talk about Willem Dafoe, the Van Helsing basically, but he's called Von Franz.
Dutchman? Is that what he is? Or a Belgian? What is he?
I think he's Dutch or something.
Yeah.
He is Dutch. Yeah. A bloody Dutchman.
Dutchman.
That's what's interesting is you have him. He's sort of portrayed as this eccentric professor who people don't really believe his theories, but he got really into the occult and started reading all this stuff about the occult. But you have the dichotomy of like you have the Ralph Ineson doctor and you have Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Ralph Ineson really believes in him over time, whereas Aaron Taylor Johnson becomes more and more skeptical as he's like, it's vampires, you see, and Aaron Taylor Johnson's like, I don't know, man, maybe it's something else, and he's like, my whole family's going crazy, like I don't know what's going on.
They're the two modern men, the modern doctor, and I'm a shipman with international trade to deal with. Like we can't think about vampires. This is crazy.
Yeah.
I'm an alchemist.
You want some schnapps?
That's crazy. Yeah, that's fascinating. That's the longest pipe I've seen since a Quentin Tarantino film.
That pipe is great. It's a Gandalf level almost.
Yeah.
I do want to reference that there's a moment when we meet him that's a reference to Shadow of the Vampire. He's playing, Max Schreck, and he's like drinking schnapps with the producers of the movie, telling the story of his history and how long he's been alive because he's method, so he never breaks character. So like, wow, this actor's actually really great, but he's getting drunk on schnapps. So when he offers some schnapps in this, that's a direct reference to Shadow of the Vampire.
Interesting.
Just a little nod.
I also saw a thing. Robert Eggers has been pretty upfront, Mike, about being like, it was based on this. I'm thankful for this. Nosferatu is great. That it's, again, like we said, his first time adapting or tapping into like a popular story people know. He said that the clip that people know it most from, because I guess it's one of those like free to use films or whatever, is SpongeBob. Did you know that like the
Yeah.
Count Orlok appears in like SpongeBob
Have
as
you
like
seen
a
that?
cutout
Yeah.
all the
Have you guys
time?
seen that
Yeah.
episode where it was?
I've never seen SpongeBob. I don't watch Sponge. I was
Oh,
too
wow.
old for SpongeBob.
Oh.
My younger stepbrother watched it, but
Yeah.
not
I
me.
watched SpongeBob back in the day. I mean, it was on when I was like 13, probably.
Sure.
And there's a famous episode from one of the early seasons, I think, where it's like who's turning the lights off and the who's messing with the
Krusty
lights and the Krabby Patty, the
Oh
Krusty
no.
Krab, and then it cuts to Nosferatu, and it's like a live action version of
It's like a still
Nosferatu.
a
He's
Max
like,
Shrek.
That's so
yeah,
scary.
SpongeBob goes Nosferatu, and that sort of became a meme when I was a kid. So I was familiar with that version.
Sure, sure.
But it's like weirdly like one of the most iconic shots in film history of Max Shrek in the doorway coming into Ellen's room. But then now it's just a SpongeBob bit, you know. Culture is interesting.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure where we're jumping all over the place, but it is very much.
We just met Dr. Von Fritz. We could kind of just keep going with, Willem Dafoe.
Well, first
Yeah.
Well, so obviously he sells him the house. He's got to travel to the house, right? So, like in Dracula, he puts a bunch of dirt in coffins and stuff, and gets sealed up in his coffin and gets put on a boat. And if you want to know the story of what happened on that voyage, you can watch a movie called The Last Voyage of the Demeter,
That's
which
right.
is just about that boat journey in the Dracula story.
The rare film based on a chapter, not a book.
Yeah.
Right.
And it kind of expands the story with new characters and stuff on the boat.
You just got that with that new Ray Fiennes The Odyssey movie, which only adapts the last like sixth part of the Odyssey, which is very interesting.
Interesting. Isn't the Odyssey about the whole thing?
But Christopher Nolan's making the Odyssey movie.
Yeah, that's
his
true
next
too.
movie.
Yeah, that's
Great.
crazy.
Odyssey.
So you watch that movie, The Last Voyage of the Demeter. But basically, he's feeding on all the people on the boat, and then by the time the boat gets to the shore, like everyone's dead on.
It's
the
the plague, Governor. I swear, it, Captain.
The plague
Put it
boat.
below.
And there's a little bit of it's like a race to get back to Wismar, where by sea is Orlok, and by land, where's my horse, is Thomas Hutter, you know, and so when Ellen's saying he's coming, it's like, is that your husband's coming, or is Orlok coming, or is that who you're waiting for? Like, who, you know, when you're looking out at the sea, longingly, that's where Orlok's coming from. But are you thinking of Thomas? So there's this weird kind of battle between the wills, I guess, you know. Slight commentary, but yeah, so it's like selling the house, being in the castle, and then now arriving at Wismar are kind of the three segments of this story of Dracula and Nosferatu. That's kind of the
While this is happening, Lily Rose Depp's friend gets sick, or I guess visited by Orlok, right? And that's basically in the midst of that, he gets called away, Nicholas Hoult, because he's like, there's been an accident at the shipyard. There's been a what? And he runs, and of course there's a huge crash. The boat, the Demeter itself, right, probably. And the coffin is gone, but of course rats are brought en masse to the small city of Whitmer. And this is the craziest part, because I did read, guys, that these are all practical rats and stuff, and that all the actors were like, you cannot like fake or CGI this. Like the smell of being around hundreds of rats at all time on sets. I mean, the shots are pretty astounding.
Yeah, there's like 5,000 rats in this movie.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
We need Ratcatcher 2 from the Suicide Squad.
Hey, there we go.
But yeah, rats are actually very intelligent creatures, and they can be trained fairly easily compared to, like, for their size, they're very smart. And yeah, so I assume for practical rats, like at least they're easy to train and things like that.
Now, but Jacob, you are on PETA's side, the asshole organization who, of course, did come out against this film to say that it's actually false to vilify rats as the cause of the plague spreading around Europe.
Sure. Well, I think that was the cause of the plague, the Black Plague. But
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think there's some.
I mean, it's not the rat's fault.
Largely human vector was once it got to
I think
humans,
the number one spreaders were humans, but I think the outside
Yeah.
factor, much like when we were all chewing on bats and penguins, was animal
Right.
based, unfortunately.
Yeah, the rats
Yeah.
weren't doing it on purpose, but that is a
No.
side effect of rats. And
and this
obviously,
is
rats famously live on ships because they can, eat the food on there in the stores and
Oh,
whatnot.
I mean that corn and rice and whatever's in these
barley.
big sacks. Yeah.
But I do like this whole angle of the vampire representing plague, and that's why he has rats, with him that kind of accompany him.
The
And
coolest take of the film.
It's
Yeah.
In my
something,
opinion, honestly.
more sinister than just like, I'm gonna take your wife, Keanu Reeves. Like this, it's a
Yeah.
force that acts upon the entire population. The shadow
And-
creeping across and hearing the screams. Like it's the plague
Yeah.
spreading. It's a nice angle.
It would be like if there was a modern superhero film where, like, over the course of it, you were like, oh, 9/11's playing out in the background, and they're kind of implying that the supervillain is the cause of it. Like, rooting it in this actual historical thing that's, like, so dangerous and deadly, and making, like, Count Orlok the eye of the storm is just such a cool, fascinating choice.
Yeah.
Yep. Gives you an
And
appetite.
what I like too is it sort of has, like, because of the obviously sexual connotations of the vampire, the drinking of the blood, blood diseases, diseases that are spread in the blood. I think of like STDs, right? I
Mhm.
think of like HIV, things like that, where it's like a blood, it's spread through blood, and the vampire being sort of the spreader of this plague. So it's all
Mhm.
very interesting. It's all
HIV
very
obviously
connected.
spread through monkeys.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
But drinking someone else's blood, not the most healthy thing to do, probably.
But
Mhm.
obviously, fluid exchange, metaphor, blah blah blah.
Yes.
Right. You're right. It kind of all ties
Exactly, but
together.
kind of all ties together with the plague and
Yeah.
the sexuality.
Some good biting and sucking in this movie.
A lot of good biting and sucking. And I in the
Yeah.
original, in the Herzog version, there's famous scenes of carrying the caskets down the street and putting a cross on the door to indicate that somebody has died. So we're seeing like a little bit of that in the
Right.
background. But in this version, it is very much in the background. We're very character focused here. And like our hospital's
Yeah.
overflowing, but we're focused on our characters. Like we're seeing the caskets, but we're not
Right. Well, there's just
isolating
like
the camera on
bodies.
them in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like dead bodies in the street, and like people like the hotel or the hospital is just packed with people that are suffering from the plague, and it's just like it's just everywhere. It's hard to escape, right?
Yeah, and when Orlok finally does arrive and goes into his coffin, goes into his house, he visits Ellen and is like, "I'll give you 3 days," and this counts as the first day because fuck you, you have 2 days actually to decide to
Right.
be with me, or everybody is going to suffer. And we start seeing the entire community, the entire city, and her loved ones are suffering as a result of the connection to this, evil force.
Also, meanwhile, while this is happening, and to Mike's point about how fascinating and exciting it is to make the female character essentially the linchpin, the lead, not only the cause of the events, but now you have this moment where Willem Dafoe pulls her aside and is like, "Hey, we all know you're psychic, right?" She's like, "Yes, like I've always had the shine,
Finally.
like the gift, the visions," and like
Yeah.
she says all this stuff where you're like, "Whoa, that's so interesting and crazy." They're like, and he's like, "And that's like part of like what he's after, right?" And she's like, "Yes, like I assume so, yes." And they kind of like have this conversation. She's like, "You'll probably have to like offer yourself to him," and kicks off this sort of bait plan, right?
Right, this is
Yeah.
where we differ from the Dracula, where it's the three male protagonists going to kill the evil bad guy to something different, and that's kind of what I think makes Nosferatu
Yeah.
stand
Right, but I
out
think
on
with
its own.
with Coppola's Dracula, I mean, definitely the Winona Ryder character had this sort of psychic connection with Dracula as well. So that's definitely in
But
there.
it's tied again to that recurrence of love. The whole like, well, you guys are literal soulmates, and that she's the reincarnation. This I just liked where out of nowhere it was like a little Stephen King where they're like, and of course, like you got the shine, girl. Like you like
Yeah.
have like psychic abilities. You can like project yourself in your dreams. You can like see the future. She's like, yes, of course.
Right.
Yeah, I always knew
I
what
even
my
like in the
Christmas presents
beginning
would be.
when
Yeah.
she's like, oh, these flowers, they're brand new, but they smell like death to me. And like she's just
Yeah.
like envisioning things.
He's like,
Oh,
he's gotta be
yeah.
like, oh, my wife's so hot, but she's so crazy.
Well, when she gives that speech early on about how I had a dream about our wedding day, but it wasn't you, it was death, and it was
Yeah.
horrifying, and the smell of the bodies, but then she was never been happier. To walk this line of
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
dread
Yeah.
and
For him,
euphoria.
for that shot, Mike, of it's a close up on her saying all this stuff, and he's in the background sitting on the bed, and it ends with him going like, "Well, I better go to work."
Yep.
Dude,
I'll go
like,
sell this castle.
my God, man! Like, you say
Right.
something to her. She just said she married death.
He said, "I don't want the cat on the bed. I'll see you later."
Yeah.
And then,
Hey,
why
do me a
did you
favor,
kill
don't
the
look at
beautiful
the cat.
flowers?
The typical female hysterics,
Yeah.
that all these women have.
God,
It's
she
like,
was begging me to get off by talking about how she's married to death.
It's like, yeah, geez. But that's like the flowers thing, why did you kill these beautiful flowers? That's in the original, like this kind of goth girl. Like,
Oh wow, that's cool.
That's directly out of the original. Why did you kill these beautiful flowers?
That's really awesome. Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. So, just interesting stuff. But
here's what Francis Ford Coppola, Jacob, and the original version, I'm going to assume, Mike, don't have. They certainly don't have the rallying team of all the men coming together. And like you said, Mike, we get the men's mission to go out and sort of destroy Dracula's home. Before that, you have Aaron Taylor Johnson struggling with this decision and giving into the madness of, and I looked up the Wikipedia to explain, to read the whole outline, but this part in particular stood out to me, where they say he commits to the vile act of necrophilia to spread the plague upon himself and dies in an instance committing suicide. Where you're like, oh wow.
Well, his whole family has died, like Nosferatu killed his whole family.
Yeah, killed
his two daughters, right?
Crazy.
Great screaming Aaron Taylor Johnson, horrible acting, where he's like, "Damn you, beast!
Your very presence offends me."
You know what I just realized? He's basically doing Gaston in this entire movie, which when everybody else is not doing a Disney film, you're like, that's an interesting choice.
Of course, Ellen is staying with
beast.
That's right.
Ellen is staying with their family, and he's getting like increasingly annoyed at her like being around, because he's like, your hysteria is driving my wife to become hysterical.
Having your monthly, your cycles are syncing up, and I shan't stand for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, well, you can't say that.
I think that's one of the best scenes with him, though, is when she's like, "Why do you hate me?" And he's like, "I've done everything I can to be kind to you," because in his mind, it's like, "I'm putting you up," and then she's like, "You tied me down." This back and forth of like.
He sort of represents that patriarchal society.
He can't fathom.
Like, I'm not really believing anything you're saying. You just
I'm your sugar daddy. Yeah.
He says, "Get out of here. Take a carriage at my expense, of course."
Yeah.
And they end up walking.
You go out into the plague-ridden streets and get the hell out of here.
Yeah. Yep. But
but Thomas isn't well, and meanwhile he's just like, oh, he's just he's just like fucking catatonic.
Yeah.
Yep. But the one thing I want to note is with the losing of his wife and his two children is the flu epidemic of 1918. Like, it was weird in that it disproportionately affected women and children, where most flus affect like the elderly.
Oh,
so really? It's kind of bringing in that element of it, of women and children being a victim of the plague.
That is so upsetting.
The Spanish flu.
Right, but it's historical accuracy to kind of do the visual metaphor of that with Aaron Taylor Johnson's wife and daughters, unfortunately, in this film.
Yeah.
So just a historical note for you.
Yeah.
But he kicks him out. He's lost everything.
We can all agree on that.
Yeah, no, that's. But plagues, baby. He's going crazy. So he's checked. Yeah, he's done. And then they're gonna go burn up what they think is Dracula's dirt. Because if he doesn't have his dirt to sleep in, by the time the cock crows 3 times or whatever.
Right.
There are many ways to do it, and 1,000 people have said it. But what I'm pretty sure we have to do, he like lays it out like that way, and you're like, all right, I feel good about this.
Right.
And of course, he has to sleep in his coffin during the daylight hours, and then he wakes up at night, right? So they could just like kill him in the daytime and like stab him with a stake or something, right?
Right. Which, yeah, you think, because obviously von Franz knows all this. Thomas only knows what he gained from the castle. He is not an expert, so he doesn't know whether he's going to be going with it. He thinks
von
it's a sound
Franz
plan, but it's all a swerve.
Knows the whole time, like, Ellen is going to have to like confront Orlok, and that's the only way we're going to be able to defeat him, is like Ellen confronting him, basically, right?
Romani like killed
Which he
his
hides
brother.
From Thomas. Yeah.
The Romani like killed his brother, Count Orlok, or what's the vampire they killed during the day?
I don't know.
That's what I'm unsure of. It could just be one of, like a random vampire that was.
Yeah. Does it spread? It seems like he's maybe the only one.
It doesn't seem like it spreads the way it does in Dracula, where he turns Mina or whatever into
or zombie style. Like if he bites you or kills you, you're pretty much just done. And he's
you don't
like
become a
Renfield is
vampire.
not transforming. He's just like eating birds.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
just like
he's
not
just,
good for you. Yeah.
Yeah, he's just a servant to the master.
He told me I would be Lord of Blood.
I could have been the Lord of the Rats. Yeah. Yeah. I
Told
don't
you
think
you'd
this.
be supervisor of bones. It's like that's like a title. It's like you're like, okay, well you can
becomes a
aim higher
thrall.
than that.
No, I think he said like Prince of the Rats or something like that.
Yeah, he does say something like that, Mike.
Yeah, the Rat King.
He said I could be Prince of the Rats. I'd be like, well, don't do that.
Which that is the surprise. They go to the coffin, they slide open the thing, and they stake him. But then Renfield, old Herr Connacht, it's like, this is what I got to do for you, Dracula. I'm going to do it because I think you're awesome. But like, really, I just got to lay here and get stabbed. I can't be Prince of the Rats. Come on.
Yeah.
He said I could be Prince of the Rats. All right,
I
stake
drew
him
all these
again.
pentagrams on the ground. I'm biting heads off animals. Come on.
I'm breaking out of jail and stuff. I'm doing everything. I put your casket. I drove it down the river and took you home. I'm doing everything I can, buddy.
There's a guy in this movie who eats bugs and birds, and Peter was like, "Don't bring up the thing about rats and the plague." Like that is proof to me that these people do not watch these films.
Right.
And Renfield, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying one improvement of this version is having Renfield take the casket down the river, because in the original and in the Herzog one, he's carrying his comically large casket under his arm, like creeping around the city, like manually.
I gotta tell you guys, in Dracula Dead and Loving It, it's Peter MacNicol who plays the sort of funny foreign guy in Ghostbusters 2, Milush. I don't know if you remember that character, but he plays the Renfield. And he's sitting at a table at an insane asylum, and Harvey Korman, who plays the Ralph Ineson doctor character in that one, veteran comedic actor, is sitting there having lunch, and Renfield reaches out and eats a spider and puts it in his mouth. The doctor says, "Did you just eat a spider?" He says, "No, I ate a raspberry." The doctor says, "There's no raspberries on this table." And it's something my brother and I have said pretty much our entire lives to each other.
That's very funny.
Why Cookie Rocket?
And Renfield, canonically does eat bugs and things like that. And to mention the Renfield, the Nicholas Hoult Renfield movie again, which is a movie from the perspective of Renfield.
Superpower.
The take on it is that when he eats bugs, he gets super strength from eating the bugs, and is able to fight crime. With Awkwafina, Officer Awkwafina.
Yeah, boy, what a film.
It's an interesting take on it. It's a comedy, but I don't know if it works that well.
Nick Cage, of course, maybe the person who has done more for German expressionism, which Nosferatu is, than any other actor in existence. That man cannot go one interview without talking about like the cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Sure, yeah.
True.
And he's a great pick for a Dracula in a movie like that.
For a maniac Dracula,
Yeah. I do think Nicholas Hoult, he's played the Thomas character, he's played the Renfield character. He needs to complete the circle and play a Dracula or Orlok now.
I agree with you. I'm also workshopping this. What do you guys think about this? Brexit Luthor. As a nickname. Is that good?
Why?
Because he's British, and he's Brex Luthor. Brexit Luthor.
Oh, Brexit Luthor.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah.
I'll buy it.
Nicholas Hoult,
man,
my house. He is working. He stays working.
He's the guy
he's in Juror number 2.
Never made it, never popped. And yet he was Nux in Fury Road, a film that we talked about, and another one where Mike, you're like, this is my favorite film of all time. Like, you kind of also love The Beast, Mike.
Yeah, he's Beast. I think Nicholas Hoult, he might not be like as big of a name star as some other people, but I think he's a good actor. Loved him in Skins back in the day, of course. And he's got 2 movies out right now.
Has no name recognition, and yet he'll star in a Clint Eastwood film, Jacob.
Does he? Because I don't know. If I asked my sister, who's more of a normie, She would know who Nicholas Holt is.
She knows his name, really?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to point at a guy and go, "This handsome guy." She'd be like, "I love that handsome guy." Okay.
No, she knows him.
Okay.
But yeah, if you compare him to like an Andrew Garfield or some of these other people that might be his acting peers, he maybe doesn't have the name recognition of them. But maybe, he stays working, and I think he's a good actor, so maybe he'll get some more recognition.
I think he does a great job in this, just with the dread, like even just sitting at the table and how uncomfortable he is with Orlok and those scenes in the castle. And
in this book, you just sold me your wife, you moron.
I've never seen signing a paper feel so stressful. Like to be able to accomplish that cinematically, but yeah, sign the contract.
Well, what else is there to talk about?
Well, you get to. I mean, it's the big finale.
The final shot. Yeah, we kind of gotta talk about the bait and switch. So as we said, it sets up the men going out on the quest. They destroy the coffin, except it's Renfield. Well, this, Willem Dafoe's like, this isn't, the reason that we really had to do this. Like, there's something else, and like, God save whatever's going on. And
Willem Dafoe is basically tricking them because he knows the whole time that Ellen. He doesn't reveal this to Thomas because he knows Thomas will be against it, but Ellen is the only one that can defeat Orlok, right?
And they have like a book that they go through that explains that, you have to basically bounce on it till the sun comes up and you'll kill Dracula.
Yes, the one who gave him your heart has the power to make him whole and make him a man, and in that he is, I guess like his immortality is
make
up.
Him mortal. Yeah.
Which means that you're 1 billion years old, that means your bones.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, the
You're
final
a decrepit
shot
old
is
body.
dead woman in bed with a bones. Who banged
Death
her?
in the Maiden.
Yeah.
As it
were.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
But
exactly.
It's a crazy bait and switch. Obviously, it's they read that that's the solution. Willem Dafoe knows it. She knows it. And he's like, I'll take Thomas out for drinks. Don't worry. He won't be home till morning. Like, I'll distract him. Do what you got to do. And then, we get kind of just that final shot. He picks up the cat. And I want to mention, vampires
He's
dying...
in the mirror. Yeah.
But the dying to sunlight, we get our first look at Orlok in bright light, and it's horrifying. But vampire dying to sunlight was invented by Nosferatu 1922.
Oh, interesting.
Not the Dracula book. So that's a big part of vampire lore that originated in Nosferatu and not Dracula. So
because Dracula does go out in the sun, like when he's the young suave.
He just loses
Dracula.
his powers. He's weakened somewhat.
Yeah.
So
I thought it was invented by Twilight because they sparkle when they go in the sun.
What is the tenet of vampirism that you guys would think would be the most negative to you? Are you night people? So do you not care about sacrificing the sun? Do you love garlic so much that you're mad that you're losing garlic? Crosses, holy water.
I'm mad that I can't stab a stake into my heart anymore.
Yeah, I used to love doing that back before I was a vampire.
Yeah.
Garlic would be hard to give up. Not going to church would be easy to give up.
Sure.
I am a night person, but not being able to go out in the daytime would be pretty rough.
I'm not a night person. I would miss the sun, honestly.
Yeah. I'm a night person, but I would miss the sun after a while. And that's kind of a theme within like Interview with the Vampire or something, where just the immortality of it. Eventually, you get tired of immortality because you're so old, you're just lonely, and you're just you just have ennui, and you're just like, I just want to die because I'm so old.
And that's the Herzog version, is playing the sympathetic loneliness of Orlok more than its monstrosity. Like he's just very lonely and ancient in that version. What I like about this take too is it's removed itself from the religious connotation. No one's holding up a cross to Orlok and he backs up. Like there's crosses in the movie, but it's never like Christianity will repel this vampire. He is a global evil, and it's not about like religion or necessarily to defeat him. It's like a more practical, pragmatic vampire, and I like that. That's kind of something that's been put in the background here. Literally.
I also like how sexy this movie was. I think it's cool that it ends with this sort of weaponized, death by femininity, death by love.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
it's a very horny movie. Not as horny as Coppola's Dracula, though, I don't think.
Well, do you see
wives? Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
You see Bill Skarsgård's, little
He hangs dong.
3D printed phallus. Yeah.
Which Nicholas Hoult now has as a souvenir, the prosthetic Orlok peen, as it were. But historical accuracy, you know.
Right.
There is something about maybe theming too of like Lily Rose Depp, unfortunately, within the context of this society, it is like incumbent upon her to essentially suffer to uphold the status quo patriarchy. Like what she sacrificed is only known to Thomas and von Franz. The rest of the society, things go back to normal, but that doesn't really increase the
there's a
quality of life for women or anything.
Along that lines, though, there's also like a real life aspect of basically who she is and her patriarch, her literal patriarch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people online have been like, well, she hasn't come out against her father, like she hasn't spoken about that. And it's like, why does she need? Like, why do you need to know like her opinion on it? Like that's her private family.
What's my
life.
opinion on my dad? It's like, what do you
like,
want?
Does she side with Amber Heard? Or does she side with her dad? Like she's never spoken about it publicly. It's like that's not really like, I don't know why that's your business. Like she maybe she doesn't want to speak on that publicly, but she probably has her own opinions on it, you know?
Yeah.
But it kind of puts her in a tough spot of like, because she is related to her father and known as, his daughter, and it's like she's trying to make her own career, but she has to, live with that as well. So
escaping the shadow of something dark, right? The theme, right.
Right.
Do you think Tony from Skins was like, oh yes, Kaya Scordello told me about your father when they starred in the film Pirates of the
Caribbean,
Stranger Tide or whatever it's called. Yeah, number
Salazar's Revenge.
773. Yeah, Salazar's Revenge.
Right.
That's right.
I've talked a lot about Skins before and how that show, a British show from the 2000s, had like 5 actors that became like pretty successful actors. So it was like good casting.
Green Knight,
2 Game of Thrones people, Gendry and Gilly. Like,
yeah.
But even Daniel Kaluuya had a small part in Skins as well.
Small, big. It was
Danny
Pudi. They were both supporting.
Yeah, Dev Patel.
I'm sorry, Danny Pudi. Jesus Christ, Dev Patel. Thank you.
The Green Knight.
Yeah,
Lucky man.
Green Knight.
But yeah, that's kind of the plot. Again, it's very Dracula, and it's just like everybody's doing their own thing. But I think I appreciate the themes of. It's weirdly accurate for like bodily autonomy with Roe v. Wade and stuff, like that those themes can be read in this. Like it does feel contemporary despite being based on a 102-year-old movie. Like Eggers has done his own thing with it, which I appreciate.
For a guy who made a film about 2 men going completely insane, he is an incredibly feminist director. Like he has some astoundingly powerful female characters and perspective on what it means for the female experience.
Yeah, I mean, I even like the stuff with Anna and Ellen when they're like laying in bed together. Thank you for loving me, showing this kind of sapphic love friendship bond that they have. He's just there's some.
I think, like I said, that it shares themes in a way with the Vavitch, where that's about a woman expressing sexuality in a very patriarchal religious society where that's sort of shunned. So there's some similar theming there, right?
Right, and Aaron Taylor Johnson is on the opposite end. He's got 2 kids and another one on the way. Like he's always doing it.
In the beginning, he's a
rutting bore.
Like, why aren't you where's your kids, man? Like, what have you guys been doing? Like,
why aren't you fucking
gotta catch up,
bro? I gotta get a house.
Well, you don't understand. I don't have enough money. I need a house.
You can live in the attic of this fucking
getting a promotion.
Yeah, it fucking sucks.
Yeah,
right. But that's societal pressure on him too. It's like he doesn't feel like he is good enough for Ellen, despite her saying, "I don't want a maid. Don't go to the Orlok thing."
When we have kids, I gotta pay the bills of a woman who woke up the other day and stared into the corner. Was like, I had a dream I married death, but it's like,
yeah, she's basically like, I love you. You're my husband. Please have sex with me. And he's like, no, I need to go travel to Transylvania for this business thing. Sorry.
And have a pseudo-sexual experience with Count Orlok at the same time.
Yeah. I need to go experiment. There is something about that.
Right.
Well, let's continue maybe those thoughts as we head into our final thoughts here. as we're wrapping up talking. We're leaving the castle.
Where's my horse?
We're back here on Normies Like Us, where we've been talking Count Orlok. We've been talking Nosferatu. We've been talking Robert Eggers. We were talking the new film, the last film of the year. That's right, Nosferatu. And real quick, before we dive in and give our last thoughts and feelings on this film, Jacob, I want to do a visual bit for our YouTube watchers. Weird hat and mustache. Am I talking about Count Orlok, or am I talking about one of those nutcrackers behind you? Grab one of those nutcrackers and put it up to the camera.
Oh yeah, he got nut.
See how close one of those looks like Count
Orlok.
Look at that.
Yeah.
You want to crack your nut.
You.
A couple different ones. Yeah.
I'm in your dreams, cracking walnuts. No, Count Orlok.
I have some above me that have a similar.
It's the one with the really black tall
fuzzy. That's like a Scottish themed one with a kilt.
I was gonna say it looks so Russian from here that it does look like
he's got a tall furry hat. Yeah. My mom used to collect nutcrackers and things, so she one year she just gave me a bunch of nutcrackers. She's like, I'm splitting these between all my kids, so here's your portion of the nutcrackers.
I like the work.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's fair. That's very fitting for this being a Christmas movie. It is set over the course of Christmas. We have a Christmas tree in this movie. She talks about Christmas presents, but I must ask you, does it pass the Die Hard test? Is this actually a Christmas movie?
I was shocked when midway through this film they mentioned it was Christmas, and I was watching this film with my brother who was visiting for the holidays. We took a very nice night out and went to this to see it basically for Christmas. Mike, 100% it passed the Die Hard test.
Really? Okay, it's a Christmas movie. Yeah. All right, well, there we have it. We have a new Christmas movie for the draft next year.
Put it on your list, Mike.
Absolutely.
We should
the original... Not on Christmas, I'm saying. So this is a Robert Eggers thing to put the little Christmas tree, and stuff like that. So
yeah, sure. I didn't see this movie until New Year's Day, January 1st, 2025. I was with my family on Christmas. We went and saw Wicked. I couldn't convince them to go to Nosferatu over Wicked, but Wicked I would not say is a Christmas movie.
Why didn't we get a Wix-Ferrasu, Barbenheimer moment?
That was really the Barbenheimer of the year for me because
it was Wicked. They merged it to Gladiator instead, Mike. It was Glicked.
Oh, Glicked.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, because Gladiator, because Wicked came out it didn't come out on Christmas Day, so it was out for a couple weeks, and Gladiator and Wicked came out the same weekend, and so that was the Barbenheimer of this year, but not as popular.
Stay tuned, and we usually reveal this at the end, but we'll just say right here as we're talking about it that our next episode is going to be talking about some of those films to wrap up.
Yeah, well, actually,
last year.
Sorry, not to correct you, but not next week, but in a couple weeks, because we have some other episodes lined up. But the way we do we've the past couple years we've done the top 10 films. Mm-hmm. Usually our first episode of the new year. This year with scheduling and stuff, we're going to be doing that, I believe, in 3 weeks from today.
It's our first watch. That's right. We'll be hitting 3:30.
I'm all mixed up because of the volcano that went off in Los Angeles. We're in a new timeline, but I was going to say that obviously we'll talk about those films, our favorites of the year, which leads me to asking Mike, why did this click so hard with you? A film that's probably inevitably going to be on that list for you. We've mentioned a couple in this episode. I brought up Aliens. Green Knight was one you absolutely clicked with as well. What is their common DNA? What is the thread of these films that you become so obsessed with? I love them. I think they're very cool, interesting choices.
So I think the common DNA between those three things, if we're thinking about the Green Knight and Alien Romulus and this, well, not that they're all adaptations, although that's interesting, of some property. It's that the filmmakers seem to care about the subject matter and the craft, and they treat the material with kind of the respect it deserves. And they put in the legwork to do the best job that they can because they have a reverence for the material. And you can feel it, like in this. The filmmaking, the way it's shot and color graded, they made custom lens filters with Burns and Sawyer to filter out much of the red frequency of light, so people are drained of blood. In the
That's awesome.
1922 version, they would tint the film reels because you filmed everything during the day because film stocks weren't sensitive enough to shoot at night. So even night scenes would be daylit, so they would tint those as blue, and interiors would be tinted as orange. So when you're watching it in black and white, it's actually all got a color dye so that audiences know whether it's a night scene or a day scene. So when you think of Nosferatu and all of the night scenes being very blue and all the interiors being very orange, he's intentionally calling back to the silent film era and the visual language that was used to communicate to audiences with his version too. So he's really doing all of the research.
Did you like the movie The Northman?
I did like
previous movie.
Yeah, I like The Northman a lot. It's got the Star Wars Revenge of the Sith ending, fighting in a volcano. Naked.
But Odin, right? I'll remind you that.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah,
Willem Dafoe's a crazy little guy in that too.
And that was the other Skarsgård, Alexander Skarsgård.
That's
other
so
brother.
Fascinating, Jacob. I didn't put
He's worked
that
with
together.
both brothers. I think they have other brothers too that are less famous.
I think I don't get mad at you if you're a nepo baby, if you're on what I'll call the Skarsgård scale of looks. If you are an Adonis human being who's the most handsome person who's ever existed, or like Pennywise,
That's what's funny is Alexander Skarsgård is so like he's this blonde, attractive leading man kind of guy. Then Bill Skarsgård's like the weird guy who plays weird characters. But Alexander Skarsgård's played some weird roles as well.
Yes, of course, but just also include with you there, Jacob. And of course, the human being that made them is the tree stump in that show Andor that you guys like, like the human sack of potatoes that is Stellan Skarsgård.
Yeah, but he's a great actor as well. And I mean, he's been working for decades, and I always like to see Stellan Skarsgård. I think he's a great actor.
Yeah,
of course, from our favorite movie series, The Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, of course. Of course. There's a lot of Johnny DNA in this movie we're talking about today.
That's true. That's very true. Chris Columbus producing this. He loves making Christmas movies.
And you know, when I saw that name at the end, I was fascinated. I didn't realize, Mike, he has been a producer on every one of Robert Eggers' films. I think that's astounding. The Man Who Wrote Gremlins, another movie you adore, Mike.
Another Christmas movie. Harry Potter has some Christmas connotations in there, right?
The first two Harry Potters were definitely the most Christmassy, especially the first one was really leaning into that Christmas feel. So he knows how to make a Christmas movie.
You know what? Blade Runner 2049, another Mike movie, a movie you both love, honestly. I know you like it too, Jacob, but I am realizing, Mike, that super sharp visuals are a huge prerequisite for what you love in a film as well. Like, you could have told me Roger Deakins shot this movie and I would believe you.
Yeah, visual, the look of a film is big to me. Show don't tell. If you can shoot a movie good,
me too, for sure.
I never really care about visuals, but that's, Jacob, you do.
You don't care about visuals?
It's never I get mad about the lighting, as we've argued a lot on this podcast, but I don't need like a lot of fancy editing or crazy angles. I just need like a John Carpenter head exploding, and I'm like, yes, good.
Fair. Well, then let me ask you about lighting. You know, like, it's always too dark. How do you feel about the darkest movie ever made, but you can still read what's happening in this?
See, it's a misnomer for me to say I'm
the way they use lighting in this movie.
Exactly.
So well, and like obviously it's intentional, and like what they're doing with like a lot of candles, candlelight, the use of shadows. Like, to get into final thoughts, like I do think the strongest element of this movie for me is the visuals, the cinematography, and that really carries it for me. Like some of the obviously the shot of the hand going over the city, like that's going to be iconic, right?
It's really good, dog. Thank you for reminding me.
It's pretty metal.
Yes, it's super metal.
And again, the scene where he goes to the castle, like I just love how all that's shot. Like that's some of my favorite stuff in the movie. So I definitely agree. Yeah, like film is a visual medium, right? And so I really appreciate a really well shot, well framed, well lit movie. Not every movie that I like has to be like super well shot, because I like movies that aren't like crazy well shot, but I definitely. And I come from a more, Mike and I both come from a more technical background with filmmaking, with working with cameras and stuff. Whereas Colin, you come from a more writing background, where you're more of a writer, not as much of a technical production guy. So maybe that's why you'll take good writing over good cinematography, right, in a movie. So yeah, I kind of agree with Mike on that.
Well, I haven't said that this was all shot on film, Colin. So 35
Oh
millimeter.
wow, that's cool.
You wouldn't get that range, that latitude in the shadows, because there's stuff that's happening in the shadows that you can still see. You wouldn't get that on digital. They had to, get that latitude for 35.
And a lot of the shots, it's like the whole, like a lot of the frame will be black, and then like one corner of it will be lit by a candle, and you can see the actor's face, and it's like what needs to be seen is seen, and like he's good at like obscuring certain parts of the frame when you don't need to see that, and that's why like you see Orlok in shadow a lot at the beginning, and you see a silhouette and stuff like that, because you don't want to see the whole Orlok reveal yet.
Now there is an extended cut coming out. What do we know about it? What do we think we'll see more of? I mean, it's what do you do with this?
Honestly, I don't know, because I'm fine with it as is. I'm wondering what you would do to extend it. I've heard some people say that maybe they would like a little bit more on the prologue about her early years leading up to like the call to Orlok, maybe, but I don't know. Maybe more of the journey. Werner Herzog's version has a really extended journey where it shows the landscapes are like almost a character. We don't get a lot of the journey. It's a wide shot. The village.
There was more Nicholas Hoult on a fucking horse, I would lose it. You can't tell me we need more of that.
I don't think we need it. I just think they could do that. Yeah.
I think an extended version is not necessary. I mean, this movie is already like 2 hours and 20 minutes or something. Like it's already a pretty long movie.
Yeah.
Maybe another guess, Jacob. Did you say your list of negatives about it?
Well, I don't have that many negatives per se. I'm not quite as high on it as Mike. Maybe like it's, to foreshadow for our future episode, like it's gonna be on my top 10, but it's not gonna be first. I'll say that. But where it ends up, we'll have to find out. But it's definitely, I liked it.
It's number 2. It's Nosferatu.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what they should have called it.
Nosferatu on that thing.
Nosferatu spit on that thing. That's
the sequel.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But I'll say, like, I guess my main sort of critique of it is that I felt like I think it's maybe a little too long, and it sort of loses narrative momentum for me. Like, I think the weakest part of it was actually for me once Orlok does get to the city, like the whole third act
end feels super rushed.
It does just kind of
about to say. It almost feels compressed for a film that feels long.
But it almost feels like the build-up is too long from like the second to third act, because it feels like they're sort of repeating certain scenes where it's like, between Aaron Taylor Johnson and Willem Dafoe and these different characters that could have maybe been streamlined a little bit. I just think it loses a little bit of momentum. Like, I thought the opening was really strong. The castle stuff was really strong, but I by the end of it, I was in the theater getting a little restless and being like, man, is this over yet or what? So, yeah.
And yet there is nothing that ever loses me like a CGI Ash in Alien.
No, there's nothing egregious. Right. Like, it's all well done. For me, and just to be clear about, I've talked about long movies and my opinion on long movies before. Like, I don't dislike all long movies. In fact, there's some long movies that I like a lot. And I think I'm against movies that are longer than they maybe need to be, because I think some I'm talking about 2+ hour movies, right? Anything over 2 hours, to me, it's like there's some long movies that need to be as long as they are, and then there's some long movies that I think would be a better movie if they were 20 minutes shorter and kind of streamlined a little bit. So I guess that's kind
Alexander
of my take
Skarsgård in Godzilla vs. Kong. I shortened that movie a lot, and it got a lot better.
So cut out 11. Yeah.
What if no Bell Snickle, as it were. But I agree that the third act can be long, and I like this movie, and I don't have to have an asterisk like I had to have with Ash, like a CG Ian Holm. Like, there's none of that. At least I could agree there's some pacing, and there's some stuff with the Herzog or the original that was not done in this, where he buys the house directly across the river from the Hutter's house in those. So he's very much like longing from the window, looking into their bedroom. Like, it has a little bit extra layer of connection there that we lose in this version.
I like it more than the Herzog version, which again I rewatched. I found it kind of mid. Like, Herzog has better narrative films.
The plague party scene, however, is great. when everybody's eating dinner and the rats are all around them. That's like one of the best things.
And there are some cool shots in that, but there's also a lot of like not that great shots, and there's a lot of German actors speaking English that sounds very like for some reason it's like all German actors, but it's you did?
Yeah. They did make two versions at the same time though. They filmed them at the same time and did two edits.
Weird.
Yeah, I watched it on Prime. It was in English, Amazon Prime. But I guess I'm comparing this to, again, I've mentioned it throughout the episode, but Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, the 1990 version, which I'm a big fan of. To me, it's still kind of the gold standard of Dracula or Nosferatu adaptations.
Is there just real quick any other vampire films you watched in your long vampire watch this year that you would put above Nosferatu with Bram Stoker's?
Oh yeah, to this year.
Well, I really liked I really liked Fright Night. It's a different kind of movie. I don't know if I would put it above Nosferatu, but the original 1985 Fright Night is a real fun movie. But this is a very different movie, and I respect it a lot for what it's doing. I think the cinematography, the visuals are really really excellent, really stylish. I feel like maybe it doesn't add as much to the story as I thought, like it was going to do its own spin on it. And I know some ways that you highlighted, Mike, that it does, and I appreciate those. But I think as much as this movie looks good, I think the Coppola version also has really great cinematography. It's doing a lot with color, some really bold colors, whereas this movie has a more muted color palette, which is kind of its own aesthetic. Coppola's doing a lot with shadows and stuff and different film trickery and stuff that I like a lot.
In-camera effects, the big boast. Roman Coppola, future director, screenwriter, part of that visual team. Very interesting.
Yeah. By the way, Nicolas Cage is a Nepo baby, part of the Coppola family, although he changed his name to sort of separate himself from the
early
Nepo babiness of it all.
Early Nepo denier. That's a fascinating move. Yeah.
The Coppola family is crazy. Like Jason Schwartzman, of course, Sofia Coppola, who became a very acclaimed director in her own right, Francis Ford Coppola's daughter, and now we're getting third generation Coppolas directing movies and things. So it's crazy. But
you will address me as the title that my bloodline deserves. I'm a Coppola, damn it.
I make fancy wine.
Now we have second generation Nepo babies. But I guess we've had, Henry Fonda, and we had, Jane Fonda. And we had, so.
And also, spoiler alert for Jacob's top 10 list. Number 1 is Megalopolis. So.
Yeah.
Maybe. But no, I would put. I think I do like this movie a lot, Nosferatu. And again, it may not reach the level of Coppola's Dracula for me, but it's pretty close, and I think it's doing its own thing, and I really appreciate what it's doing. And I do want to see it again because it's now been like 12 days since I watched it, but I need to see it again so that I can really understand it. Because I also had to go use the bathroom in the middle of the third act at one point, so I might have missed some stuff. So. It happens, but
I'm the only one who's seen it twice, I suppose, then. But I am also the highest on it. But I'm going to gush. So, Colin, what do you think, though, before I go crazy?
In visual experience, Mike, you saw it at the Alamo?
I saw it in Ohio with my dad over the holiday break, and then I saw it at the Alamo. So I have not gotten to see it in IMAX, which is now I'm regretting because it was shot really well.
Jacob, you saw it at our beloved theater, my ex.
No, I saw it at a theater I've been going to more often, the Lamel NoHo in North Hollywood.
Oh, really? Yeah, sure.
Which has it's a similar distance for me as our old Cinemark NoHo, but it's has some more smaller independent films and different things like that. So any sort of movies that don't get as wide of a release, I can usually find them there. So I've been going there more often, and it's a decent theater. It's pretty cheap tickets.
Good theater.
As well, so,
certainly not scary what's going on outside it.
No.
I went to a showcase cinema. It's not one that I usually go to, but I go to a couple times when I'm back home in Ohio, just in the past in my life. And it's horrible. I don't very much enjoy showcase cinemas. It seems like shoddy operation, and it's not a great theater. But there was a goth couple I did see at the bar beforehand, totally done up, like a super hot goth couple, this guy and this girl. And I pointed them to my brother, and I was like, well, we know exactly what movie they're going to. And I was so
3.
happy to see this. Yeah, I wish. Please, we're here for Jim Carrey.
Yeah, that's awesome though. I have been
Yeah.
seeing a lot of goth content around this, and
Yeah.
people like going to the filming
Cool.
locations.
The
And stuff.
resurgence.
Sure.
Yeah.
What funny story, when I went I went on New Year's Eve to see a movie, and then I went on New Year's Day to see a movie. And on New Year's Eve I was like deciding between Nosferatu, but I went and saw Anora, which is a movie maybe I'll talk about
Yeah,
in
we
the
just talked
future.
about it.
On New Year's Eve, but when I
A
was
lot of
standing
talk
in
about
the
line,
power
too.
of sex.
what's
Yeah.
that?
A very sexy movie.
Making the same
Yeah.
joke. Yeah, blushing.
But when I was standing in line for the tickets, some guy was talking to me in line. He's like, "Oh, you going to see Nosferatu?" I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna see that soon, but I was gonna see Anora." He's like, "Oh man, it's Nosferatu time, New Year's Eve, baby." But
Dude,
then
I
when
love this guy.
yeah,
Was his name Renfield?
Yeah.
yeah, his name was Herr
You can call me
Knock.
Knock. Yeah.
But when I did go see Nosferatu, when I was coming out of the theater, there was this older couple behind me that were arguing, and the woman was like very upset, and she's like, she did not seem to like the movie very much. And the guy was like, "No, you don't understand. Like the New York Times, like all these places were giving it good reviews. Like it was getting these great reviews." She's like, "I don't care. I didn't like that at all. It was too,
Now
you know,
he's not gonna like it because of the fight they got in. That's
yeah." And they're just
Bummer.
arguing all the way to their car as I was walking away, and I was like, some problems in that couple, I guess. But
That's
that's
sad.
unfortunate for them.
This
So
movie never
Mike's
pleased me
maybe
the way he
normies,
could.
some normies not appreciating some of the, you know, the visual style of it all, maybe thinking it's too weird or something. But
I see
Mike,
people say it's pretentious.
I could see that.
I
I was
don't
gonna
think
say Mike saying that guy in line was he Renfield makes me wonder, would normies be able to accept if there was a popcorn bucket for this that was just the body of the pigeon with the head missing and it was just full of popcorn?
I would like that. Yeah, let's do that. They had
Yeah.
some coffins. I saw they had Nosferatu's coffin as a popcorn bucket that was actually
No
pretty cool.
fucking ways.
And then I
That's
saw a
true.
lot of women were buying it and then using it to put their, products in, like, tampons and
Well,
stuff.
did
Like,
the,
we're owning this. We're owning this.
yeah. What about the Alamo Draft House? Did they have any menu items that
The
were
cocktail, yes.
No,
the
they were
Bloody
doing all
Mary.
wicked.
The
I know.
Bloody Orlok,
Wicked.
of course.
No, it's a hot dog called the
green
Orcock.
gin. Dude, it's a dangler.
Yeah.
What were the
no
wicked
menu.
cocktails?
I can't remember. I didn't.
Okay.
Probably like a pink one and a green one.
That's
Yeah.
what it has to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that. But when I went in Ohio with my dad, the whole theater was well behaved. Actually, nobody was texting. It was a decently full theater. I was surprised for it, kind of rural area. But there was 2 teenagers who left like 15 minutes in. I think they were like theater hopping and were like, "This is boring."
You know what, Mike? We had a couple in the front row, not the goth couple, young college, or not college kids, probably high school kids. Front row, like truly corner,
Yep.
caddy front row, where you could like basically see them the whole time, like the whole theater could. And they were talking through all the trailers, making out furiously, and I was like, "Oh, these kids are gonna be a problem. Like this movie experience is gonna suck."
Yeah.
Completely shut up during the movie and watched like enraptured the whole time. I was like, "All right, there we go."
It has a power. Audiences are behaving.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was into it, man. Yeah.
That's another
great.
thing I like about the Lamel NoHo where I've been going recently. Not to dox myself, but compared to our old Cinemark, we've had some interesting experiences there with people talking and Colin almost having to fight someone in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Keep listening to the Planet of the Apes episodes because we're again 2 months or 3 months away from finally telling a story we've been teasing for a year. If you want to,
Right.
If you're not listening to those episodes, you haven't heard that tease. So
Yeah. But so many theater experiences are ruined now by people talking. But that's why I like to go to theaters where people are at least a little more respectful, and that's why I like Alamo Draft House too.
For sure.
I like theaters that shut that kind of thing down.
Was there a merch, Mike? Was there a shirt of a Nosferatu of some kind?
I think because I got back a week later after the release, all that stuff wasn't around. But I wish they had they have these 2 little dolls that they'll dress up as different movie themes, like the Shining dolls. They had them in like goth Nosferatu style gear.
That's
but
cool.
That's about it.
I like that.
But if I can, I guess, do a final thought, kind of
Please.
general, why I like this so much is it's for film nerds by film nerds. One, Robert Eggers is a huge dork. He does his research. He wanted to remake this since he was 9 years old. He said he did a stage version when he was 17 in high school that some local guy said, hey, put this on in my theater with more budget. Like, so he's been doing a Nosferatu. He's had it in his mind his whole life, right? So he gets to do this. 1922, 2024, 100 years later. So it's a love letter to essentially the history of film in general, not just vampire movies, and both technique and, he had a rule, no steady cam, no handheld. Like, we're not doing that shit for this. Like, that was his hard rule. So, and being a love letter to cinema, I like that then he takes that same 100-year history of vampire tropes and throws them in the garbage and does something wholly original as this folkloric vampire that we almost never, ever see in cinema. And that's why I just love this take on the character. I like the theming, maybe a little long, but it might be my favorite vampire movie ever just because it's so much like, I want to do something completely different. Because I think vampires can be a little one note. Is they're very handsome and very sexy. I like that this was a sexy movie, but he was horrific. So yeah, I think the two things, a love letter to film while also saying, fuck you vampire movies, I'm going to do something no one's ever seen before. I think that's a bold choice, and I think he did a great job with it. Yeah.
Well, I slightly disagree with you.
No, how dare you, Jacob?
Because I think this movie, it is in certain ways, I don't want to,
I agree. It's also Dracula again. I agree with that.
It's derivative of other adaptations like the Werner Herzog, Coppola's, even the original. Like, there's certain shots that are inspired by takes. So I wouldn't say it's wholly original.
It's been done a lot. You do have to give it that.
There's shots he's doing from the original too, like direct homages. Yeah.
I appreciate your take on it, and we all are entitled to our opinions.
Fair.
But no, I think I'm glad that you like it, and I'm mostly positive on it. Just maybe not as high as you on it.
No, I like the atmosphere. It feels like a dream, and I understand the argument for the Coppola version. Like, that is also pretty good.
Yeah.
The in-camera effects that they're doing are also revolutionary. So,
right. I'm kind of ride or die for that. To Bloodborne it up and bring up something that we're not really talking about in the episode that we're talking about it. But
it's all right. You can't not untie Dracula from Nosferatu.
Yeah. I mean, they're essentially the same story, just with minor details and different takes on it. And I appreciate all the different adaptations. And I'm just a fan of vampires in film, so I do like a lot of different versions of that story. And I think he did a good job. So, I'm generally a Robert Eggers fan. He has a very specific thing that he does, but I like it.
He's got that Night movie, and then he's been linked to a Labyrinth film, a Jim Henson Labyrinth film, either a sequel or some sort of remake. What do we think?
I
don't know. That seems a little out of his wheelhouse, but I don't know. We'll see what he does with it.
I couldn't imagine him going that commercial. Do you guys think he ever will?
I don't think he would. I'm hoping that that's not a real thing. I can't. It just doesn't seem to fit. I don't think he has an interest in remaking things that are less than 100 years old.
Yeah.
He likes antiquity, generally, right? So
right. I've seen some takes on like Twitter and things of like, and people will make insane takes about anything, but like I saw someone that's like, why aren't our directors like inspired by like Howard Hawks and like American filmmakers of the 40s? Like Robert Eggers is inspired by like Ingmar Bergman and these in German, expressionism and like these European filmmakers, but it seems like a lot of sort of art house filmmakers today are less inspired by like the American filmmakers of the 40s
directors.
And 50s and stuff. So it's I don't know if I necessarily agree with that take, because I think he's inspired by what he's inspired by. You can't like force someone to be inspired, but there's other directors that I think are inspired by these other directors. I don't know, but
well, like we talked about how much Flanagan's into Kubrick and stuff.
Yeah.
Like there are some people, but I guess that's almost a British at this point filmmaker. But
right.
So Europe, but
like someone like Alfred Hitchcock, who was worked within the Hollywood system for many years, but was seen like the French New Wave, like saw him in a totally different light, because Hitchcock during his career was considered very commercial, but then the French New Wave critics and things would be like, no, you don't get it. Like, this guy's like a genius and like doing all this stuff that's kind of going over some people's heads. Yeah. So things get reevaluated. But I guess what I'm just overall saying that I like Robert Eggers and I like that he's doing his thing. Yeah.
Just no Gary Oldman.
No, I mean, Gary Oldman versus Bill Skarsgård. It's a toss-up for me. Winona Ryder, I like, another toss-up because I like Winona Ryder a lot.
It's all about that armor, that crazy red.
That armor is sick. Back to Bloodborne, Dark Souls.
But there's room for many different takes in this story. So.
Yeah, and I think
there will be many more.
Right, and in my journey of getting my Nosferatu PhD, like, it's been cool to see the different spins on it. Like, Herzog does a really cool thing when you see the exteriors of Orlok's castle. It's like a ruin, it's dilapidated, but then the interiors are fully furnished, so it's like more like, am I in a dream state? Like, so just little subtleties like that, and just, I guess it's all back to Dracula, but I don't know, I've become enraptured by the shadow of the vampire at this point, and it's all thanks to Robert Eggers rebooting it in 2024. So good job, man.
Is there any final fact you want to share where you're like,
Mike's over here, eating bugs and biting off birds' heads over here.
Very soon. Me and Kenny are eating bugs. We're loving it. So I guess this is something. Piranha Films, they only ever made one film, Nosferatu. It was started by this guy named Grau. And Grau was an actual occultist in real life. Like, he loved all that shit. He was like getting pissed off at, who's that evil guy from England? He was like the most evil man in the world.
Aleister Crowley?
Yeah, like Aleister Crowley, like they were in the same intellectual circles. Like the occultists in Germany and England were like cross-pollinating. So these were like real occultists who were like, let's make the fucking Dracula movie. Hell yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a fun fact, is that like, they were kind of very much obsessed with the subject matter in a Renfield type way. At least Grau was. And that's why he started the film company.
Yeah. Of course, Max Schreck was a real vampire.
You know what?
As we know from Shadow of the Vampire.
Well, that's what kills Shadow of the Vampire for me, is once I learned that the film stocks weren't fast enough to shoot at night, and there's a lot of night scenes in Shadow of the Vampire. I'm like, this is bullshit. You couldn't have filmed a night scene in 1922. Fuck this movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I just like the fun fact of it being one of the earliest examples of like someone trying to get around a copyright by changing names and things like that. It's like, we're still like trying to do that today. And of course now Dracula is, I believe, in the public domain because it's so old. So anyone can make their own adaptation of Dracula without having to pay royalties.
I think you can show Nosferatu, much like Night of the Living Dead. That one due to not filing a copyright, but so if you want to throw a movie on the TV in your movie,
now Coca-Cola is free.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, there's somebody framed this during my commentary listening. They're like, an ancient thing born of the occult escapes to another country to spread its influence, is very much the story of Nosferatu and the story of the film itself, because it was tried to be destroyed. A couple prints made it to America, and then slowly those circulated, and it became one of like the most iconic horror films ever made. So it's got a great legacy.
It's the story of Elon Musk.
Oh no, yeah. Well, someone's going to be spreading their influence one way or another. Yeah, it is Elon, maybe. I remember when Orlok says,
"You will accept me in your heart, Grimes."
You have 3 Z's.
Come to me, Elon.
I am of the dark manga cult.
My son's name is X Triangle.
Yeah.
But Colin, did you say your final thoughts or what you thought of the film?
Oh, I love it. I think it's great. Spoiler alert, it will be on my top 10 as well. We'll probably mention more about it then. And I'm always very excited to see what he does. I even wouldn't mind the Labyrinth thing because I just like Labyrinth, and it would be fun to see little guys again. So.
It'll be Harry Styles back at it again.
And Big Eyes and fucking Willem Dafoe is the Jareth the Goblin King part. Hey, let me hear my song.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe has been in every movie of his except The Witch. So he likes working with Willem Dafoe.
Well, he actually was in it. He played Black Phillip. It's
voice part.
So of course, Ralph Ineson was in that one. But Willem Dafoe, I think Robert Eggers and Yorgos Lanthimos are going to be splitting his time for the next couple years because they both seem to use him a lot.
I just think he's the best.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe is always good. I always like to see him in whatever he's in. But it'll be interesting to see where we have it numbered within our top 10 list, who has it the highest and stuff. It seems like Mike's top 2 is going to be this and Alien Romulus, but I'm not going to, don't reveal now. But that's
I still haven't seen Sonic 3 yet, so there's time. There's time for things to move down.
Make a run.
Knock these all down to number 10.
Hair knock them down.
9 Sonic 3s.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting to get into that. Yeah. Also, last random thought: the cat. She has a cat. Cats eat rats.
Yeah.
He's kind of a rat guy. She has to kill the rat guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Metaphor. Do with it what you will.
Probably something.
And a bat is like a flying rat.
That's right. And no bats in this movie.
El Rata Alada.
That wears a hat is the cat in the hat.
El Rata Alada.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, like in the lighthouse. El Rata Alada.
El Hada Anakata.
Nosferatu. Pina colada.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Right.
Just to give a teaser for next week, so we will be doing. We have a subject in mind. It's a video game subject. So I'll give a little tease without revealing because it'll be a surprise. But we're talking about a video game next week.
Also under Dracula's influence. About that. That's the only other clue you'll get.
Currently,
yes. By the way, I was watching. Speaking of Nosferatu. This show Creature Commando is on HBO Max, this James Gunn DC show, and there's a character, I guess, in the DC universe named Nosferatu that's like a female vampire character. So there you go. Check it out.
All right. Cool. Well, thanks for Count Orlocking it in with me for this episode.
Yeah.
It's been
fun. Orlocked the gates, as Mark Maron would say. Check us out. We had a bunch of visual gags. We didn't even talk about Mike's incredible color grading. He's basically in a black and white film this entire time. If you want to check that out, do it at YouTube.
Desaturated.
_like_us on all social media. Rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Helps out a ton. We beckon you to do this.
Absolutely. Check us out on YouTube. Like I said, next week, a video game. The week after that, we're returning to our planet of the primates.
We're going to war, are we not?
That's right. We're going to war with the primates. And then the week after that, first week of February, I believe, will be the top 10 films of 2024. Spectacular.
You know how there's that movie out right now about that musician, but it's like Caesar the Ape, like played him, right?
Oh yeah, that British musician that doesn't exist. Apparently.
We need to use
Robbie Williams
to do more genre movies. There should be a Planet of the Apes where like a vampire attacks and the apes have to deal with like a vampire ape situation.
Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, let's get a side. Don't let us.
Apparently, Americans don't know who Robbie Williams is, the British singer.
I don't.
No, me neither.
You never heard of him before?
Nope. He's
not real. To my understanding, he's a monkey.
Yeah, he's a chimpanzee. It's incredible.
Yeah, I guess he has a biopic where he's a monkey. I don't understand any of it, but I've definitely heard of him before, so that's kind of strange to me. But
some people put that on their top 10s. So,
whoa!
I saw a scene from that. It looked insane, where he was like dancing. He comes out of a building and starts dancing on the sidewalk. He's a monkey. Who knows? I don't know.
He says, "Ape shall not kill ape."
Yeah, he says apes together strong.
This is Why Cookie Rocket, 10. But he does it dancing.
Yeah, Why Cookie
Top 10
Rocket.
movies of the year. One of my favorite episodes. So we'll be doing that in a couple weeks, and I'm catching up on all the releases that I haven't seen. So get ready, normies. It's happening.
Yeah, write us recommendations before that episode too
coming.
At normies_like_us. You can tell us what movies
right.
we need to see before we reveal our top 10.
Yep,
that's right.
I'm trying to catch up as well. I have an appetite for watching movies, so recommend.
Yep, and that's what we do.
No hunger. Yeah, and we've been your hosts. This is your vampire crew. This is Colin Acula. Rah!
Mike Von Franz.
You will address me as Count Jake-Lock, the name that my ancestors gave me.
Lord. Sorry, my lord. Would you like to sign the papers now?
It is bad omen to travel while in ill health. You shall listen to my counsel.
It is very quotable.
Yeah.
You shall
we
light
didn't
and
really
saith.
talk about his voice, but when the reveal of his voice was one of my favorite parts because
Very normal.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like
better breathing villain, him or Darth Vader.
Ooh, Vader more iconic, but I appreciate the breathing here. Adds a lot to the he is dead.
Yeah. I would compare it to the reveal of Tom Hardy's Bane voice as two of my favorite voice reveals of all time.
Two maniacs on the leash.
Yeah.
Well,
So
that's
there you
all
go,
him
Normies,
too.
but
That's
catch you
not
next week.
post-process. That's
Yeah,
Bill
that's what I read.
Skarsgård's voice.
Which was crazy to me because I was like, surely there's some kind of post-processing the way he's doing that with his voice, but apparently not.
Very quotable. All right.
All right.
Well,
We'll catch you next time, Normies. And don't let the vampires get you.
that's right. Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.